Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and with me today is my ruggedly handsome co-host, William.
The book we're doing today is There Is No Antimemetics Division by, I have already forgotten the guy's name because I don't think it's actually his name. I think it's a pen name.
QNTM,
Quam,
like quantum.
or something like that. Yeah, I don't, that's not his real name.
And he has a very normal name when I looked it up. I'm almost positive it was like Steven or something, but...
yes, no, it was something remarkably normal. But this book has been making the rounds as being a great sci-fi book, and it was elected to be one of our book club books, and it wasn't picked, but I was like, this sounds really cool. This sounds kind of like up my alley. Oh boy, did I not know how up my alley this book was gonna be. Maria, do you want to give what the premise There Is No Antimemetics Division is?
And I don't know, I still have not read the leaf, like the book's own description of itself, so no clue how it describes itself. But the premise of this book is that, you know, within our existence, there are certain types of unknowns, and there's an organization that takes care of it. Think like X-Files kind of thing, but the people in this world hate X-Files. They think it's a shitty show. But within this world organization, there are different types of unknowns that they deal with. There are, you know, like just ones that do weird things, like weird creatures just out there. There's like items that do fucked up shit. And so anything anomalous to humanity, the organization deals with. And within that umbrella, there is the Antimemetics Division, because there is a Memetics Division, which is dealing with unknowns that are ideas that are infectious or, you know, plaguing. I think they talk about the one that gets an earworm stuck in your head, and then...
Memetics coming from... most people know the term as meme, but memetics just means like an idea that kind of replicates kind of a thing or endures or insists. And the Antimemetics Division deals with unknowns or phenomena that you can't remember. So that's the whole thing, is like, oh, you can't remember this, how do you deal with it? And
the different ways in antimemetic unknowns like affect the world. And the book is kind of structured, at first you think like short stories, and you think, oh, these are little unrelated tidbits, and you're just dealing with different at first you think you're dealing with different people within the Antimemetics Division, and like what life is like for them, what they do, the kind of forces they deal with. But quickly as the book unfolds, you realize there is one overarching big bad anti-meme unknown that is an apocalypse is coming. And slowly as you read, the characters are putting together and re-putting together this threat and what their plan is to deal with it. And it's all the terror of having to deal with a threat that you consistently have to forget by virtue of what it is in your own survival, and how can you fight such a thing.
Yeah. And fascinating. Really cool idea. So one thing I should say is that I had been like, oh, when I originally heard this book, I'm like, oh, it's kind of like the SCP Foundation. And then once I started reading about it, I was like, oh, he left in a bunch of Easter eggs to that. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, he left in a lot of Easter eggs to that. He must have been inspired by it. And then afterwards, I came to realize that it actually was an SCP Foundation book that had the serial numbers filed off. For those who don't know, the SCP Foundation is like an online co-written kind of story universe that's basically like, they call them SCPs, but it's like the basic idea is there's a weird paranormal thing. So like, let's say it's like a werewolf, and then the SCP is a diegetic text of how does the Foundation, which is like the organization, keep it contained. What does it do? So it might be like, containment procedures include guard maintaining 6 silver bullets or something like that. And it's written this very technical way where they'll redact information, and it's diegetic, and they're super addicting to read. I read a bunch about 10 years ago, and then I wrote one, and people fucking hated it, and I got lit up, and so I then didn't engage with the
Why
Foundation
did they hate
again
it?
for the next, like, they were really mean about it. And like I'm sure it wasn't good or whatever. It was like 13 years ago. But so I used to know a lot about it, and now I know less. Ironically, I wish I could have had an anti-meme to make me forget that experience. But this is basically that, but with the serial numbers. So instead of the foundation, it's the organization. Instead of SCPs, it's unknowns. I right off the bat didn't love that it had this whole. There's like, it feels like a hat on a hat at times. Like there's the special there's like a special control group, and then there's a special control group, and I think feel for like a standalone book we didn't need the organization part of it. I feel like you could have just had an anti-memetics division. But that was me going in. A, I don't like hats on hats, but B, I already kind of knew about the whole SCP thing. How did you feel about it going in? Did you feel like that was a hat on a hat, or?
So I didn't feel like it was a hat on a hat because it made sense for me that there would be, like, if you had a memetics, it made sense that there would be a memetics and an antimemetics division. I wish they worked together more. Like there was a point where I was like, man, but that also made me think of like a lot of times in companies I've worked for where I'm like, man, I wish these two departments talked more. Yeah. So it felt kind of accurate to bureaucracy. So I had a really weird experience with this book because I started it, and I've said this before, I start these, I just pick up, I go and I see what's on my schedule. I get the book and I just start listening. I didn't even fully ingest the name of it. I just started listening, and the title sounds silly. Like there is no antimemetics division. I didn't look at the cover, nothing. I just
didn't see the big menacing obelisk on the front cover.
Nope. I literally just went whoop, just dived in. I was going on a walk, or I was gardening. It was something. So and all of a sudden, this book that I think, because it starts, and at the very beginning, I thought, oh, okay, I know the tone this is going for, because it kind of starts with like you think it's going to be like office silliness.
Yeah, it's a little wry.
With a little.
It's very dry.
And then this book had me by the throat. Like all of a sudden things got creepy real quick. And I was like, where am I? What is happening? What is this? And it quickly became very horrifying in a very delicious way. As you guys know, I don't read the horror books that Will, Elin, and Katie have read.
Oh yeah, you weren't through my horror arc.
Yeah, because I'm a big chickadee chicken. But this is the kind of thing that I can handle. And also, it's just delicious in its creep factor for me, I found. And so I think because I didn't have the context of like, that you had kind of coming into this, you mentioned SCP in like when we were texting, you were like, it reminds me of SCP. And I was like, what the fuck is that? So I looked it up, and then I quickly realized, oh, this is that, but kind of like polished into, because the thing is, I don't just see it as something where the serial numbers has been filed off. I from what I can see of like the actual thing, it feels like a polishing to make it a more cohesive arcing story kind of thing compared to what I saw on the like website of like what there is.
He'd originally written and published these chapters too. There's two versions. There's like three versions of the story. The first one he did that. He literally posted these like serially. So the way to kind of understand the story is it's sort of a serial gathered together into a book, which actually kind of makes it make more sense. Yeah. And then he self-published it under the open license that the SCP has. And then when a publisher wanted it, he filed the serial numbers off. I should say I kind of buried the lead. I loved this book, and the thing about it is that I didn't just love this book. This is maybe one of 5 books we've read where I was like, oh, I don't want to watch YouTube. I want to figure out what happens next. Let's go. I want to keep going forward with this. I don't like that I have to take a break. I just wanted to mainline this. If I had had the opportunity, I probably would have listened to this all in one go. This is exactly my kind of jam. I will say, though, this will not be everyone's kind of jam, because this is a very specific feeling and it is a very specific tone. I feel like the book did a lot with character, for example, but I think a lot of people will feel like there isn't enough character in it. I think the creepiness will not be for everyone. I have notes about the second half of the book that like are things that I don't necessarily know make it worse, but are things I would have liked to see done differently. Like I feel like there's a bit of too much of a magic with too many steps. What's that saying?
Yeah, that's what you say. Magic with
Magic with
too many
more
steps.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, magic with more steps towards the end, which I kind of feel like on. But anyway, we'll get to that as we get to that. And I think there are certain things he could have done differently. But I do get people who aren't into the creepy tone or the distance tone. This is a book that, like, you are in people's heads, but it feels very dispassionate. Even as, you're dealing with these characters with a lot of. And there's really only like two characters, basically, in the book.
And one of the things that I'd say about the tone is I think that distance is because this is a omniscient narrator. There's points where you're in a character's head and then the narration steps back and tells you something that the character does not know. Or says like the character will find this out later. So it really that distance works really well and then adds to the creepiness where you're like, narrator, what the fuck do you know? How do you know this? What are you doing? And it almost like there was a point where I was like, I wonder if this book is like mainly collated by like an unknown. Like, is this 0055 just in his weird little study room? Recording shit.
Is it diegetic in the way that everything else is?
Yeah. And so it kind of plays a lot with that. I also really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the crap out of this. I think as far as like the level of creepy I can handle, this is it. Like, it's a sweet spot where anything else might have been too much. And there were a couple points where I was like, no.
Well, ironically, the book gets less creepy in the second half as things get worse. Some comments. Because this is a mid-month live stream, so I picked this book, but all of our book club members got to join in. They get to join in and leave comments. We have a Patreon join, and you can get access to that. So,
also,
Chris M says,
comment.
Yes, having read both versions, it is a streamlined version. Judo Shrew says, it's a weird blend because SCP is like internet fuel. It's horror plus whimsy a lot of times. It's goofier than most serious stories, but also has corners where it's incredibly dark. I feel like this reminds me of some of the last sequence craft war books, particularly dealing with U-3125. It was super uncanny in the Morgan chapter. Some of the narration was like the silent onlookers, not constrained by time or space. Yeah, it's really interesting. The way that those elements come together to give it, and going back to what Judo Shrew was saying, this book is funny at times. It does have a little bit of whimsy but that like just makes things worse in a lot of ways.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You can use humor and absurdity to get real emotional responses later in the book. For example, Sunshine, I will argue, is a very funny, absurd concept that ends up being really fucking sad. At the end of the book.
I knew that was gonna happen. I was like, the doggo. This is the fate of the doggo. I think horror tends to be more intimate, and as it escalates and scales, it's just not quite scary. Oh, that was the other thing I was gonna say. Is that one thing I kind of went in expecting was that this book was gonna be written in the form of. Hold on a moment. There we go. That this was going to be a bit like House of Leaves, in that book is, in its structure, supposed to mirror what's happening in the story and the plot. And this book isn't really like that. It has a few parts where the text is redacted, which I actually don't think makes sense. The reason that the text is redacted in SCPs is because this is a diegetic document that you're not supposed to reveal certain information to the people who are just reading it. Here, it's not a diegetic document, so why is it redacted? It doesn't really make sense to play around with form. It seems a little vestigial. But like I kind of expected this going in to be like a story of like, oh, if it's going to try to keep the reader from understanding this idea, and it's going to kind of intimate around it this threat that's going on. And it didn't really do that. It has a more conventional style. But I don't really think that's bad. I think it's very good. Like I would have been like, ooh, it's so impressive if they were able to pull it off into that, the style, the structure mimics the plot or whatever. But I don't think it's really necessary. I think in the end, this was probably a better way to go.
Yeah. And I would agree. I thought the redactions, especially in like scenes of dialogue between characters where like, again, there's that omniscient narrator that is telling you, because there are sections of the book that are just entries into their database about certain phenomenon and things, and those having redactions make sense. But I think you're completely on the nose. I will say I think there was something trying to be done with that form of it, because there are certain pages where like you just have a black block on the screen, And there are points where later in the book, you get a ton of little ones and stuff
I will
like that.
say that I think that I listened to the audiobook, which is excellent. The narrator is so good.
Excellent.
But like that kind of narration and that kind of redaction stuff is less annoying to look at than it is to listen to. It's very annoying to listen to.
Super.
Funny little thing. You remember the sci-fi writing class that we met in?
Yes.
You remember my first story that the teacher was super impressed with before they realized I'm really just fanfic trash? That was actually inspired by the SCP stories.
Really?
Because if you remember, the robots in that think in a very specific way where within brackets they think differently. That was inspired by one of the SCP stories where you would have somebody would say something and then in italics you would have like a super like poetic way of putting it. And I like, so like, funnily enough, this goes back to the beginning. This is our first day.
Oh my God. It's our first
full circle
day, babes. That's actually so funny. I still remember that story vividly. And it was one of, there was a lot of crappy short stories that we had to read in that class. Some of the published ones were really good. I will never forget the one about the really ancient creatures that are immortal that just don't move and people look at them. In like such a it's still my favorite way to think of immortality. Great class, not a lot of good things, but Will wrote a banger of a short story.
I should go over it on the for a critique stream.
Yeah.
Because I did end up fixing it at some point. A lot of the problems that everyone had with it. I introduced like a cool Middle Eastern lady scientist, which weirdly enough helped a lot. Dr. Nazir. Anyway, getting back to this, let's go ahead and start with the plot, and we can talk about it more as we go. Okay. Do you want to start with my favorite main character that we've read for a while? Because it's so cool when we get badass old ladies.
So, our main character, and the book opens, so there's a little like prelude that tells you about U0055, which is a unknown in a particular room, and there's no security into the room, but you go in, you talk to this creature, you come out, you don't remember, and you also you can write down what it looks like, but then you'll kind of be unable to read what you wrote. And so it kind of immediately sets you up and puts you in the world of the kinds of things you're dealing with. And after the little blurb, and again, it's like the actual the organizational file in their database for
diegetic.
Yeah, it's diegetic.
It is from the world.
And then we start with our main character. Her name is Marie Quinn. She is in her 50s. She is busy, and she's been called in to basically like the what they call them C-suite here, but what would be the term executive? She's been called into an executive's office, like a high executive's office, and she's like, "Why? We didn't have a meeting schedule. What is this about? What does he want to see me about?" And she's talking with, the book opens and she's talking to his secretary, and keeps asking the secretary a question she's already asked the secretary a couple of times, and she's like, "Oops, oh no, I've already asked that." And the secretary's like, "Yes, 3 times in the past 10 minutes. What the fuck is up?" And she's like, "Oh, you think I'm losing,
I have short-term memory loss, which she doesn't, but I thought immediately was very cool. But
and then she gets called in, and there's this young guy, like 20-somethings, who calls her in to, I think his name was Maslow, her boss's office. Maslow. Calls her into Maslow's office.
Or Marlowe.
It's something like that. Chat, get us the character name.
Honestly, Chris, you've always been an MVP here. I know this isn't The Witcher, but let's see if you can keep it up.
Let's see.
Chris usually kind of knows for some reason.
Mallow, yes, Mallow. There we go. Okay. I knew it was something about. I was like,
it was between the two of us.
Yeah, I was like, there's an H in there. It was Mallow, because I remember going back this morning when I was rereading bits of it and being like, that is still an odd name. And she's going in to see Mr. Mallow, and she's like, "Why are we meeting?" And he's like, "Who are you?" And like the young guy who called her into the room has a gun pointed at her, and she's like, "The frick?" What, like, but also there's a sense of like, oh, I'm too busy for this. And
Yeah.
he's like, why are you in my organization? Why do you have clearances for stuff that hasn't even been built yet? Like
You must be a spy.
you have every clearance for everything across this entire organization. Who the hell are you? We don't know who you are. I don't know you. What you and so you must be a spy. And he's like, my assistant, I think his name was Levine or something. We'll pretend it was Levine. My assistant Levine thinks, we should have just taken you out, but I want to talk to you and see if we can clear this up. And she's like, I'm the head of your Antimemetics Division. And he's like, there is no Antimemetics Division in the foundation or in the organization. And she's like, yes, there is. And she asks, like, she's trying to explain. And basically she says,
She's like,
there's the memetics division that deals with all of these kinds of things. Well, then there are also anti-memes, things that take ideas, take memories, take things, and we deal with all of those horrifying things. And it requires, I have a team of people, about all this, you should know about all this. And there's her phone keeps going off with a reminder to take her pill. And eventually they kind of take her phone and as she's talking, he's not immediately, like, he's still disbelieving, but he's not having a very strong reaction. It's like there's something there for him.
mm-hmm.
And basically there are drugs that you take when you work with anti-memes and you're part of this division that deal with the effects of antimemetic forces. There are drugs that will help you maintain your memories. Right. There are drugs that'll take away your memories for different purposes to deal with different forces. And she has a certain one that she's supposed to take every day at certain intervals. And that's what her phone is telling her to do. And she's like, wow, you must have skipped a dose. And he's like, oh, shit. And so he takes one, and his assistant's like, no, don't believe her. Why would you take that? Like, you don't know that's an unnamed drug. And she's like, listen, if you call a pharmacy about it, they'll say they don't know. But if you tell them to look it up, it's there and they'll prescribe it for you. Like, this is what it is. And you have to take it repeatedly. And then she's like, there's actually, because there's a point where they're like, oh, how do we know any of this is true? And she's like, look up U0055. And they're like, there is no 0055, because they would originally look it up. And she's like, you have to know, like, you have to want to see it. It's there. Mm-hmm. You're just glancing off of it. And they look again and it's there, and they're reading through this and they're like, oh shit. And her boss looks at her and goes, we've had this conversation before, haven't we? And she was like, uh-huh. Yeah, my guy. Yeah, we've had this fucking conversation before. Can we stop?
You must have. Yeah, you two forgot to take your drugs again. They're called Nestics, by the way, the ones that help you remember.
And she's like, there's actually 2 anti-memes in here with us right now. And they're like, what? Really? And she's like, first there's, and I forgot his number, which is a shame.
We're going to call him Sunshine.
We're going to call him Sunshine because that's how she refers to him personally. She's like, there's Sunshine. He is a small little antimemetic who isn't in containment, and he's just attached to me and he eats my memories. Nom nom. I give him little tidbits, and that's what he survives on. And at first you're like, this is terrifying. And the book is going to take this terrifying concept of this thing that's just following her around, eating memory. Data, what the fuck you doing, my guy?
Look at this kitty.
You want to sit?
Talking about annoying little shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunshine, she basically, she's like, look, no, I have it trained. Basically, it eats some trivia. I read trivia all night, and it eats the memories, and I can't remember it, but he likes it. So she's just a girl dealing with a male boss that has no idea what he's doing every day life. I mean, but yeah, and so she's like, that's one of them. And the other is Levine, and she shoots Levine. And the boss goes, whoa, what happened? How'd you get that gun? And she's like, basically, I got Sunshine to eat his memory of me taking the gun. And I knew he wasn't a good guy because you don't have an assistant. You have a secretary. He must have been compromised.
And he also did not have a security tag. Like they all have lanyards with their like clearance stuff on them. And this guy didn't have one. And they were like, was he compromised? Was he a human? Is he like, they're not even sure if he's human. Like, is this just... an anti-me? Like, is this just a weird unknown? And because one of the things she says is you don't miss a dose unless you're purposefully delayed from taking it, which means whatever this anti-meme was purposely kept Malo from taking his medication. And he was like, oh shit. And he's like, how much do I need to know? And she's like, I'll catch you up, and stuff will come back as the medication kicks in. But you kind of get the idea that like these, and it immediately is a bit like creepy, because you're like, there's two other people in the room. Like when she says that, you're like, because again, she's a 50-year-old woman who gives mad, I'm a head of a department and I'm harried vibes. I'm too busy for this. And so then when she's like, there's actually two in the room with us right now, you're like, fucking where, Marie? Fucking where? And so immediately I was like, what is this? And it's delicious. It's such a good opening. It's so good.
And it's still a little funny at this point. Like, it's a little off humor. It's a little offbeat. It's like, oh, okay, this is a funny way to open a book about, dealing with an anti-memetic squad of people who just don't even really remember that it happened. And I really liked it.
The way I thought, I almost thought this was going to be like The Office tone, like one of those, like kind of, and especially the way it opened. I had no idea what I was reading.
It's so funny that you do that. It's funny.
I just dive in, and then I was like, it was just, the first 3 stories we get affected me so much. I literally went to Will and I was like, yo, have you started this?
Yeah.
And he was like, no. And I was like, Will, I don't know what I was expecting, but whatever I was expecting, it's not what this book is. It's kind of deliciously creepy. And Will was like, oh crap, I have to start it. And being the good friend he is, he did immediately start it and then immediately outpaced me. Also,
this Sunshine is one of maybe a few books that I've read early for the podcast instead of at the last minute.
Yeah. Sunshine is U4987. Our little guy, our little Sunshine, who again,
we should say that creepy. the form of the book is that there's about 3 or 4 short stories essentially, and then there's a bit of a longer plot. And I kind of we'll talk more about the format of it as we go, because I didn't quite expect it to be like that. I'm gonna say right off the bat, I don't love the Nestix drugs. Okay, so here's the thing. What I find fascinating, and what the SCP Foundation stories do really well, and I think is what attract them to people so much, is how do you deal with this insane para-reality, supernatural, strange thing, but with like just normal human powers? You know what I mean? Like, there's just normal physics. How do you deal with this crazy thing? How would you try to contain, whatever? And the Nestics are basically like, well, but what if you had magic to be able to remember a thing? It's like they're made up. And so originally, the Nestics, I think, are okay. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I'll give the book this one pass. But it does become magic with more steps later, and we're going to talk about that as we go. But it starts here with the Nestics. And I'm like, I would have preferred if it was like there was some kind of like memory thing they could do that was like real, or,
I will say I didn't mind the Nestics at all. That for me, this book felt less sci-fi for me than it did. It's weird to say, because it is sci-fi, but it didn't feel like sci-fi for me. It felt more like a weird alternate reality with like monsters, and like how would you interact with them, and thus if all of these other things are possible, then science is obviously working in weird ways that, where I'm like, drugs that are magic with more steps, I buy it. I will
say, the way he develops the anti-meme reality, I think, is really cool. It makes a lot of sense, and we'll talk about that as we go, because he does expand the idea beyond like, oh, this is just a weird thing that happens, to like, no, there is this massive existential horror that you don't even understand the shape of. That's really cool. So in the second story, it's the first day of this guy called Lee. And he just got to the not the foundation, the organization as they call him. He's just figured some stuff out. And a guy approaches him in the cafeteria.
He's on his lunch break. They just had a weird, where someone brought an unknown out onto stage, and it kind of made Lee feel a little icky. It was a little creepy. He don't like it, but he's talking and he's digesting everything in lunch.
Yeah. And this guy comes up to him, Morgan, I think is what they call him.
No, Gage.
Nope, Gage. And he like starts saying some weird shit.
Adrian Gage.
Right. And he starts saying some weird shit, and Lee realizes nobody else can see Gage, but also nobody else can see him. And he's like, oh shit, they said there weren't any dangerous unknowns around here, but apparently there is. What's going on? And so he starts running away from Gage, and Gage kind of slowly follows him Terminator style.
And he's also realized Gage has taken some of his memories. Like, there are things missing that he should know. Like, there's a point where Gage initially asks him, where are you from? And he tells him. And then Gage says something like, wow, what a delicious, you've had such an interesting life. And he's like, what is he talking about? And you realize, as the reader, he has told him a lot of information. He's been talking to Gage for much longer than we think he's been talking to Gage. And Gage has taken those memories. And then Gage asks him again, where are you from? And he goes, oh, I'm from... And he realizes he no longer remembers. We remember it was New York. You're from New York. Lee. Lee, you're from New York. And he's like, oh, fucking shit. And once he realizes nobody can hear him, this thing is whatever it is. And he's like, this is an unknown. Fuck. He starts running. And he's like, I gotta get somewhere. And he ends up in the elevator and panicking. And the thing that he notices is as he's getting into the elevator, he can see Gage when he blinks, when his eyes are closed, and he can see Gage through tables and stuff. It's just this image superimposed on everything, but it's also like spatial. So if he's turned around, not facing Gage, he can't see him, but he can feel the presence.
It's like a wall hack.
Yeah. So he ends up in the elevator, and he's looking through, and he's like, what is this? What kind of... And he uses Gage, and he like the letters correspond to numbers, and he's able to find the U sequence of 4 numbers that associate to Gage, and it basically says, hi, congratulations, you're trapped in this unknowns, because the only way you can see this particular entry is if you are in whatever reality it is now constructed that you are a part of. So
you are in the gullet of this unknown, Gage, and he is eating you. Nobody else can interact with you. If you're reading this, he has successfully eaten all of the other people that this has happened to. This is an asynchronous log. At the bottom, say what you tried and if it worked or not. Yeah. And he scrolls through it.
Yeah, you have to get to a room where all of this information is. So he's booking it to this room. He gets there. He has to read. Like, he's now digesting a ton of research as Gage slowly and inexorably is coming towards him. And basically people are like, well, we tried this thing, and I tried hitting him with something, and that didn't work because Gage doesn't really react to physical things. But there was a point earlier where Lee, in his panic, threw his cell phone at him, and the cell phone hit Gage. And this happens early in the story. And so as he's there processing through all of this, and he sees that people have tried physical things, like, and everybody's left records of the shit they've tried, and this guy is just digesting and like, okay. And so he tells his idea, which is he is going to use, obviously his cell phone was able to have a physical effect. And he's like, a cell phone contains ideas. There's something about ideas and knowledge that Gage can interact with because he eats it, but it can also have a physical effect. So he creates like a rope, like whip of data cords that are hooked up to like hard drives. And he uses that to bash Gage's head in. And he ends up killing Gage. And he's the first person who has been successful, because there's a moment where you as the reader are like, oh, Lee's gone. Lee's getting
he's number 64, sure. Like at the bottom of the addendum.
Yeah, he's getting
and the last guy just took an axe to him. He sees the axe on the floor. And so he goes, and then he debriefs with Quinn from the previous story, where he's like, man, this is crazy, Dad. That happened on my first day. And she's like, uh-huh. And he's like, it is my first day, right? And she's like, no, it's not. The first thing he did was ate all your memories all of the memories that you've had in our division up until this point. He ate them, so it looked like it was your first day, but it wasn't. This is, no Antimemetics Division operative is better than they are on their first day. You get the idea that they do kind of sort of remember things on an instinctual level from the past. Like, they're eating their conscious memories, but their unconscious memories sort of form a little bit, it sounds like.
And their basic personality kind of stays. And so she says, like, there's parts of your training you did. Like, you did stuff that someone who actually, like, that the training worked. You worked through the things. And he thinks back to, like, throwing his phone, and he's like, was I lucky, or was there something there? Was there and he was like, so what am I? And she's like, you're the teacher. You were teaching that intro course
Yeah.
to those other people's first day. It was not yours. And he's like, how many times has this happened? And she's like, a lot, but you're pretty good. You bounce back in like 2 weeks. You'll be feeling way better, and you'll get some of the stuff back. And he's like, oh, fuck. But they're also like, man, that guy was. People were. How long has he been prowling around eating shit? We had no idea. Great job. We love it. We love to see it.
And we're also kind of introduced to the idea that there is an anti-memetic space. There is a memetic space, and there is the physical space, and these are ones that are crossing over. So there is some overlap, because he took the physical manifestation of knowledge, and that was the only thing that could hit the knowledge, but because the knowledge had to make itself a little vulnerable to get there, kind of an idea, which I liked. A couple of people in the comments have said this is their favorite one and the best part, and it is almost like a perfect short story. Like, if this had just been a short story in a magazine, the form of the story mirrors the function of it. It's a great little, like, and this is kind of what I mean by, like, this is like such a cool way of, like, how with normal, no superpowers, no nothing like that, no sci-fi stuff, how do you deal with a thing that eats memories and has eaten all these other people's memories? And I thought that was really cool. This is, again, in certain ways, not the peak of the story, but in terms of the purity of the idea, it's really good. It's an excellent secondary chapter, and I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna be doing little like side
Vignettes?
chapters, either vignettes, or maybe this is our second main character, or like whatever. But like, okay, this is a cool shape.
And it really is. It's such a good, and I think what you said about like as a short story, the scope of this is just perfection. You can read the story, ingest it, and walk away, and a satisfying meal. A satisfying little aperitif. And then we come to like the third story, which was for me like the height of the creep factor. There was something just very terrifying about this story. But it plays into in a way where when I first read it, I didn't know. Like Will and I were like, "Oh, I wonder if that's going to come back at some point." And it's going to come back.
Yeah, in certain ways, this is the short. You feel like this is okay. Number 3 in the short stories. We'll talk about it at the end.
Yeah.
Judo Shrimp says, by the way, like mechanically, it's tight. I think the others work, but they're more thematic stuff. Yeah. And then Chris M says, the Adrian Gage was my favorite, and that it was unfortunate because it set up my expectation for the rest of the book, and then the horror turned more into gore, and that doesn't really hit me. Yeah, I'm torn because I like Quinn Sheridan's characterization as it went on, but it started off so much more interested in her being a linking piece across various stories as an equally mysterious entity. Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end of this one, because this one does function as the last short story that you think these are 3 unlinked stories, and the first 2 are unlinked, but the third one's kicking off the plot.
Yeah,
actually.
and the book is going to pretend it's continuing with the short story things, because while the next chapters are all linked, they each function with their own beginning, middle, and end, and kind of function as their own short stories, but they are inextricably linked, where without stuff that happened in the other ones, they don't work as well. Now, I will say, I think you're right, Will, that I think it could have been stronger if it was like, kind of like, if anyone has watched Doctor Who, one of the things about the Davies era Doctor Who, in the first Davies era,
I don't watch that children's program. No,
that's fine. But one of the things it did well in that era initially was it had individual stories that had their own scope, but there would be like a subtle through line there would be like little clues in those other unrelated like stories that would then come together in what the season was going to end with. And I think that could have worked really well for this book, where it was more stories like number 1 and number 2 that could have then eventually. But I also did really enjoy it for what it is. I'm one of the people where, like, I honestly really enjoyed this book, and it made me sad. Like, this book made me cry. And again, when I texted Will and I was like, what the fuck is happening? I did not think this book was going to get me to cry. Now, I will say I've been particularly weepy the last 2 weeks, and I cry very easily at the moment. because of
And
stuff.
always have, but no, again, I sat down and I would have read this in one, and that's so
Yeah,
rare for me to not feel like reading is a chore. Even for books I've liked on the channel, I feel like reading is a bit of a chore. Yes, the thing about it is the end of this story will give us our big bad, and the thing about it is that I kind of thought, oh, this is cool just to leave hanging as an existential horror, that this big bad is out there looming on the horizon, and throughout the rest of the, and I was like, okay, is this going to become the big bad for the book, or is it just going to become another weird thing about the
thing.
world? And I like
Exactly.
the idea of it as just a weird thing that exists in the world and not the sole plot. But again, I also just really like the plot. So
Yeah.
I'm like
And
Maria.
so,
I'm also like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
I could have taken, write both. I would read both versions of this, and I would
But
have both.
really, I mean, like do a short story collection for the first book, and then for the second book have the plot. You know what I mean? Like that
Exactly.
was kind
That
of cool.
completely makes sense. So how number 3 opens, and you'll understand why we've been speaking it this way as I explain it. Number 3 opens with our girl Marie talking to the one of the old heads of the Antimemetics Division, uh, Andy Hickson. And Andy has been in retirement, but he's it's his last day, and she's taken him to a place that's familiar to him. And he comes to, like, we're in Andy's point of view for this. He comes to, and he's like, why the fuck am I here? And he was like, oh, it's the lake house from my childhood. I love this lake. What a great lake. We're on a boat, and it's Marie Sheridan. Hi, Marie. And Marie's like, hi, Andy. I need to find some information that is only in your brain. And so we let you, when you retired, you wanted a retirement, we let you retire. We took away all of the complicated icky memories and like classified shit. We erased your memory, and you had a great little retirement with your family. And your family thinks you're dead right now. They already had a funeral. You promised us your last day of life, that for like 16 hours or whatever it is, 12 hours, we could have the last bit of your life. And so essentially you work for us again.
Yes.
And I need something in your memories. And I've got here a class, whatever, nestic drug that is
Zed.
supposed. What?
I don't know if it's class Z or not. I just like saying Z.
Yeah.
But basically, what we find out is that nestics are kind of a rejuvenation water of life. I forget what the term
Different
is.
ones do different things.
Well, the thing is, they all do that, but what happens is, or that's what they attempt to do, but basically the main side of, they weren't able to be successful at creating a youth of life, whatever drug, but basically they do respring your memories, which is why they work against antimemetics.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a super strong one that will actually make you younger and bring all your memories back from when you were younger, but it will kill you at the end as you get younger and younger in your memory. So that's what we gave you. You actually were the one who came up with this, so you're going to tell us how the Antimemetics Division was founded, because you were there.
Yeah, because they were like, she was like, what happened in 76? And 76 was the year he founded the Antimemetics Division. And he was like, it was really great. We found so many unknowns. We did such great jobs in containment. And he's like, but then I began to realize that it was too easy. We found so many so quickly. The containment, it was like everything had been done before. And he's like, so I started going back to read files, and then I would just like get lost, and I would wake up and people would find me, and then it would take me a couple of days to recoup. And she was like, yeah, we have records of you going into those files again. And she was like, and he basically, as he's talking and his memories are going backwards, he realizes that there had been a previous, that wasn't the first Antimemetics Division. There had been a previous version that they had forgotten, that back in World War II, there was a division of the British Army that were called like the Unknowables or something. And they had originally, like, they'd just been like a special ops, but like they started dealing with weird phenomena, and they unintentionally became the first Antimemetics Division. And they realized that ideas were really terrible and contagious. And they developed a bomb that could erase memory, like collective memory, just do a whole wipe on all of plant, like just poof, gone. And they made it to thinking that they could like use it for the war, but while they were developing it and everything, the war ended up getting handled. A different bomb was deployed, and so they were like, okay, and they kind of sat on it. And then there was the Ojai cult in California, where all of a sudden, in a time before social media and high-speed internet, an idea from this cult caught on at such an infectious level that it just took over all of America, and it started leaking into the rest of the world. And it was subverting people. People were becoming the worst versions of themselves. It was a real icky. And they were like, oh my God, this is our time, baby. This is our time. And they were found with their bomb by the organization, who was like, what do you have here? And they were like, we have this bomb. And they were like, perfect, we're going to set it off. And they set it off, and it was a perfect use of the bomb. Nobody died. There was no deaths. And they were able to completely erase this thing. But with it, it also completely erased the existence of the previous Unstoppables, and thus they became, and there was different names, but they eventually
They
settled
destroyed
on,
it so much that Maria just changed the name from Unknowables to Unstoppables. Do you guys see how powerful it is reaching
it's
through the
very
page?
powerful.
There's also this hilarious bit about how, yeah, I think it was Unknowables. It's really funny. There's also this part about how like they had to build the bomb like 5 times, and they kept realizing that the bomb kept exploding by accident, by realizing that in the past it had exploded. Like again, this is playing with the whole idea of like, how do you deal with something that makes you forget in a way that's really fun. And this also is like kind of a believable, like, okay, they're going backwards. There's also a point where he's gone to his youngest self, and he's like, Marie, it's so good to see you. How are you? Oh my God. And she's like, we got to hurry up. And he's like, you can give me 3 minutes. And like, it's like this. And she's like, I'm Quinn now. He's like, you got married. That's awesome. And like, it's a very human moment. And it's little moments like that that help the characters kind of come to life, I think, in a way that doesn't make the book feel soulless. Yeah. Marie really is a character, even if we are at a distance from her. And she's very likable. And we get like little hints of that within this very kind of mechanically distant story.
Yeah. And you're right. Those moments are really where the book kind of shines, because obviously this author, Quantum / whatever his actual name is very gifted at writing this like SCP Foundation stuff and like that stuff. But if you're right, those moments of like him being like, no, how are you? What are you doing? You obviously became lead of the department, unsurprised. And like, there's this joy. And you also understand that he was a good boss. Like, he was a good guy. And there's this point where they're talking, they get back to the thing again, and she's like, okay, so why did everything get erased in 76? And he was like, that's what you're, and she's like, yes, that's the information I'm killing you for. And it's just such a, like, you knew already that he was gonna die, but it's phrased.
I think the
in a
other
way.
thing that helps, the other thing that helps, I think, is that there is an inherent kind of humanity in seeing this man become younger even as he's dying in front of his friend. And the story is good at not harping on that. It is sort of, it understands that this is fundamentally a very human. Oh, look at Data. For audio listeners, there is a black cat who's just chilling. He's just being a little bean.
He is a little bean.
And so the book is good at just letting you kind of infer this friendship between them and the humanity of this moment. And I was like, okay, good. But what we find out is his memories come back from that period. And what we find out, and maybe you can describe this part, because you're probably going to remember more of the specifics. Yeah. And I just am going to go over the broad strokes.
So he says, we discovered something that it came at us fast, something that started eating through our ranks. And it is a thing that does not like to be perceived. And if you know it and you can see it, it sees you, and it does not like to be seen. And the only way, and as he's telling you this, something is happening in his body. Maurice is staring at his eye, and his eye flashes like a cat's eye. That's the exact term. I reread this morning because I was like, this shit's wild. And also, I accidentally, in my reading of it, confused this guy with Hicks, and they're two separate people, and I realized that afterwards. But anyway, something is happening. And as he's telling you this, he was like, and it doesn't like to be perceived. And something shoves out of his eye. And he was like, and the only way to make sure to fix it was to make sure nobody could remember it. So I had to wipe everything and my own memories, because that's the only way. It's there. It is this horror. And as this is happening, and he's beginning to, and she's like, wait, tell me. And she goes, it has a number. And she's like, what's the number? What's the number? And he's like, 5. And as he says this, like a spider like juts out of his eye and comes out of his stomach, and all of a sudden he's a puppet being held up on these invisible, it's as if there is an invisible giant spider behind him, and coming through his face and body, it becomes visible. And this thing, she sees it, and there's this point where as they're talking, he says, so once you know it, you're in danger. And she thinks, I know it. Like, and so in that moment you realize Marie Quinn knows about this thing, but didn't remember in this moment that she knew about this thing. Like, she's been aware. And again, it's one of those moments where you realize things are happening, discoveries are happening over and over again. And again, just this image of this man hoisted into the air on the legs of an invisible giant spider thing, and the only parts of it you can see are the parts visibly jutting out of him. And she shoots it, and she's like, oh shit, it's coming for me. But I need to solve it. Like, I need to fix this.
I need to get out of this. How do I do this?
I need to get out of this. So she grabs one of her nestic drugs that does the opposite. Instead of giving memories, it takes memories. And she has a bunch of nestic drugs in her to help her maintain. So she has to, like, it literally says she has to do quick mad math to figure out the exact dose. She plugs it into herself, and she jumps off. Like, the whole boat and everything is kind of risen, and they're almost like up in the air on a platform, and she has to jump
because
off.
This huge kaiju spider-sized tower is consumed, because she also shot him, and it just didn't work. Does the, I'm going to call him the big bad because I'm just going to forget his name constantly. Does he talk at this point, or am I remembering
he doesn't.
later?
He talks, in the Morgan chapter.
But basically, she falls off the ship, and she gets picked up a little bit later by people being like, that's weird. What did you go do there? Like, why don't you have a squad with you? That's real odd. She's like, that is weird. We don't even know who... Go ahead.
There was a point when before like the big bad is fully revealed, where she realizes, why am I alone? I should have a team. And it literally says red alert, like her brain is kicking into like a memory, like she's been trained where her brain is like red flag, something doesn't make sense. Your memories are being fucked with, because she was like, there should be other people here. I should have a whole support team, backup. But yeah, so when they find her, they were like, why the fuck were you here? We know there was 2 people on the boat, but we don't know who that other person was. What the fuck? And she was like, I don't know. And she goes, but I obviously made myself didn't know. And she knows that something significant has happened here, but she also doesn't remember. So that big scary spider thing no longer remembers her either.
But there's a great moment too where she's like, man, we don't know so much. Like, we have no idea who founded the Memetic Squad. And you're like, oh shit.
She's completely forgotten the found.
She's blacked out of that whole thing.
And it's
some really quick comments. So December says the author is generally good at doing shorthand characterization by giving a very few specific beats that tell you a lot about their dynamic without actually having to explain it. This is going back to what I had said earlier. Judo Shrew says, St. Jez says, I think this would have been a better opening chapter, really set the mood for the book. And then December says, I actually like the stakes being slowly widened. The first chapters are quite contained. Yeah, I think I don't think this would have worked as a first chapter. I think there is something to the idea of the veil being lifted back. I think the second chapter could have been a really good first chapter if it had been wanted, because it is so self-contained. But this you kind of need to know about what's going on to really get the full heft, I think. And at the end of this chapter, I was like, oh shit, is this going to be the big bad? Or is this just going to be a thing that this is just one of the weird parts of this world? Is there an apocalypse waiting to happen if somebody remembers? Like, that's so creepy and weird. Like, this existential horror of this thing we don't even know that could eat us. And also, it's a big-ass kaiju spider. And
by virtue of being an Antimemetics Division and doing research, you will find it. It's fucking terrifying. Like, your literal job of fighting antimemetics and doing research to discover antimemetics means that at some point, someone's going to discover this fucking bastard. And it's just delicious. Fucking delectable.
Summer also has it's cool how the narrator is fairly consistent as far as I've read. They don't withhold information, but use in media res to trick you into thinking you know what's going on. Yes, and they're also good at giving you a sense of what the character has forgotten without explicitly saying so. Like, they talked about how in the second chapter, Lee, at one point, the Gage asks him, like, oh, where were you born? And he forgets. Or he like, says at one point, like, Gage is like, what about your father? And he's like, I was raised by a single mother. And then later he's like, what about your mother? And he's like, I was an orphan. What are you talking about? Like, there's a good...
Like,
Yeah, the author is good at keeping track of what information you're able to keep track of, which is a really underrated skill. I
yes.
have to be honest, as a writer, and especially in a story like this, it's really important. But yeah, so you go ahead.
I was just going to say, it almost feels as you're reading it like you're going to be lost at certain points because you understand how much is being played with and how there's a lot of different timelines of knowing things. And he does a really good job of keeping you grounded, where even points where, you know, you're like, oh my God, did I miss something? You're able to roll with the story despite it being like a very complicated concept and like stuff happening. You can like fly with it. Now, again, I think this book would be better on a reread, because a lot of the little things I think work really well.
I did want to reread parts of it, but I just didn't get a chance to. But yeah, no, I can imagine. And so again, this is the part where I would have liked it to be a short story collection and book 2 to be the big bad, because this is the big bad. But what are you gonna do? Okay. Story 4, you think, is going back to the short story format because it's about a new squad division member who goes to Maria and is like, "Hey, have you noticed that outside our building there's a massive obelisk?"
Oh wait!
That nobody
we have
talks
to talk about the ones who walk very slowly.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So that's actually the 4th chapter, is the ones who walk very slowly, which are. Ooh, what just happened? Okay, there we are. My for those who are audio, my camera went out of focus. I felt like the Turkish camera was once upon me.
Oh, that's an old meme for you guys. I don't know if you guys remember that.
So it is about a giant, like the largest creature on planet Earth that is an antimemetic unknown that clouds itself in a way where you can't see it, and they just have existed on Earth forever.
Basically, as a defense mechanism, you can't remember it. Is essentially how it's structured. Is that it naturally developed a certain amount of antimemetics because of its size to protect itself.
And it to the point where, as people got better at developing cameras that could see through it, when somebody took a photo of one, it immediately died because it's not supposed to be perceived. And they're just these giant, like, think of like a brachiosaurus, but just like even gianter. And they're just slowly walking across the planet, vibing. And they think they're all extinct. They're like, oh man, we perceived them too much. They're gone. Sad little giant dinosaur, invisible boys that we can remember. And so you get that little thing, and and this also makes you think, oh, look at us, we're getting, this is has nothing to do with the thing we just read, you know?
And you're like, oh, this is such a weird little side story tidbit of lore. Like, oh, this is going to be good. Again, that's why the big bad seemed like it could be a tidbit of lore of just like, oh, okay, this thing off the side. But yes, then we hit the next chapter, which is, as I said, new division member comes in, is like, hey, Quinn, there's a giant obelisk. Nobody seems to notice. And Quinn's like, all right, I got to tell you about it. And basically they do this whole walk and talk up the thing. And basically the idea is that this is the remnant of a civilization that was destroyed somehow and nobody remembers it. Like, this is the only remnant of it left. There has been a massive civilization on Earth at some point, and now we don't go there. We begin to understand that there are like anti-memetic areas where people just naturally avoid, and we naturally avoid thinking about them. And this was kind of cool, and I think this is where the book starts to be like, no, there is an anti-meme like dimension upon that kind of intersects with ours at times, and it's not just like, oh, this is one or two weird things that have happened. There's a lot of things on our planet that have happened that we don't remember, and like that was kind of a cool idea. There is this hilarious line where the intern, she's not an intern, is like shocked. She's like, you mean millions of people died and nobody remembers?
We don't remember at all.
And I'm like, bitch, there's a genocide going on. What are you talking about? People die all the time and no one remembers.
And also, like, we don't remember what happened to a lot of ancient civilizations.
Yes! We have no idea what happened. We don't know who the sea people were. We don't know. I was like, this is not that horrifying as you think it is. Like,
I think what it's supposed to say is that, like, oh, they were wiped versus just forgotten slowly over time. And the thing is, there isn't, like, I think if this had been handled better, it could have been like, I think what could have made this work better is if she turned around. Yeah, is if Quinn had turned around and been like, we don't know what happened to the Olmecs. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
if they're one of the ones we don't know what happened to, but like there's a lot where we're just like, what the fuck happened to them? What, like, did they die of disease? What, like, where did they go? What
Mm-hmm.
happened to them? And bringing that up and being like, part of humanity is, and this does get said here where like humanity is able to move past grave
Yeah.
tragedy and just continue living. Which is kind of horrific, but also how we survive. And
And
the other
the
thing
intern
is,
is like, well, how did they all get wiped out? And Quinn is like, well, they ran into an anti-meme idea that destroyed their culture. She's like, aren't we at danger from it? And she's like, no, it's really like kind of not something our culture can even engage with anymore. And they use hieroglyphics. We don't even use those anymore. And the intern's like, but I know hieroglyphics.
I'm an
And looks off into the
Egyptologist.
distance. Yeah, it looks off into the distance ominously.
And the other thing I have to say, the reason this intern can see it now is she just started taking her first little baby doses of Nestic drugs, so she now can perceive things that she couldn't perceive before without the drug's assistance. And so she's like, has this thing always been you, bro? And Quinn's like, yep. And as they're up there, Morgan freezes a little. And as she's like kind of processing all of this and they're having this conversation, she freezes and she's like, there's something coming. It sees me. And immediately Quinn is like, oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, 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 no. And she's like, I shouldn't see it. But she looks and it is a spider thing with a body being kind of held up inside of it with 2 gunshots and like 2 wounds, one in the head and one in the stomach. And it says to her, this is to get you back for the lake. And she's like, I don't know what that means. She doesn't even process it as something to her. It's almost like the thing says it and she doesn't even, like, because you as the reader are like, oh, like, shit, it's Spider Guy. And he knows. He remembers. You don't, but he remembers. But like Quinn is like, unknowns be saying weird shit
story,
names.
Bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just got to get out of here. And the other thing is this area, like this giant monolith is on like a like when you leave this space, you don't remember what happened on it, kind of thing. And so she's like, she tries throwing her walkie-talkie, hoping it'll get out of the field that this is in so somebody could see it. And she ends up having to like run and get away. But Morgan's just like taken because she's trying to help Morgan and she like bashes her on the head to try to break the connection. But as Morgan comes to, she's frozen. And it's in that similar way that Andy Hickson, or I don't remember if that was his name, but I'm going to pretend it was frozen as that thing kind of worked up inside him. Like there's a similarity to it. And then she is lost to us. And Quinn, and then when she leaves the space, she doesn't remember what happened. Wild time. She's like,
oh, weird, bro. That's odd. And like, okay, so as a short story, I was like, this could have worked. It's a cool follow-up to the previous short story, but what I realized is, oh, this is the plot now. The plot is this horrible thing coming closer and closer. And it was okay. I didn't find it super creepy. There's parts of it that the existentialness of forgetting things is very creepy to me, and this did hit that at times, but I don't think it hits it as well as the previous story did. Zelly Adams says, as an Argentinian, the idea of deleting historical collective memory, like, it really hits hard. For those who don't know, the Argentinian government did a whole thing called the Desaparecidos, I think, where they would just take people out of society and you couldn't, like, they were just disappeared, essentially. And so, like, there is something very creepy to that, and I think the story would be creepier if it engaged with that and then was like, no, this is another level, like, entirely of that. And it's fine. I don't know. This is not my favorite of the I think because at this point it's kind of going over the same material a little bit.
And I would have liked it if it didn't have to do with the spider guy, and maybe like at the end there was like a little soupçon of it, because I actually really liked, and somebody, December 3305 says, this is my favorite chapter because, in the nicest way, I wanted to see Quinn totally out of her depth after so much competence. And I really liked the conversation. Again, I think it could have been fleshed out more, up onto the monolith and kind of dealing with like what an and also dealing with the reality that like whatever we're dealing with right now, people have dealt with it in the past, won, lost, we will win, we will lose, kind of. There's this inevitability and repetition of life thing happening, and that is just really well. And I liked the conversation. I also vividly remember this chapter because I was listening to it in the car going to pick up Mexican food. So I also think of the yummy smell of the Mexican food in my car as I drove to my mother's house.
I will say I agree. I would have liked the lighter touch, like as the intern, is about to step off and have her memory forgotten, she sees a spider silhouette in the distance, and you're like, yes. Oh shit, something like that instead of another escape the spider sequence.
Absolutely, that would have been, and like Morgan survives. Quinn survives, and Morgan doesn't remember the weird spider shape she saw, but we do, because like that I think would have been the way to handle it, and it would have allowing for them to continue having a conversation about how terrifying their job is and like the ramifications of it. Excellent, delicious, really good. But so this I would say for me felt, but I also just really liked it, but it could have been better. Next, I think the next one is the fingers. I believe
the fingers and the husband. So up until this point, we've learned that there's also a point in, I think it's the last story, where you realize that the members of the organization are falling away. Like she kind of talks about how with the intern about like, oh, it doesn't actually make sense we have so few members. Really, for the amount of work we do, we should have like thousands, and there's only 400 of us. And then in the next story, she'll mention like, it's really crazy, there's only 340 of us. And you're like, ooh, something's eating them.
We keep losing people.
Yes.
And go.
This one starts with Quinn at home, chilling, and she hears somebody breaking into her house. And she's like, how did they get through all the security systems? That's crazy. She pulls out like, I don't know, a screwdriver or something.
To break into the house of the head of the Antimemetics. Like,
that's a crazy story. And I immediately knew who it was going to be, but I was like, okay, this is fun anyway. And like this guy comes up and she immediately puts the screwdriver to his neck and is like, who are you?
And he's not wearing shoes. Like there's specifically a point where she's like, why did he fucking take off his shoes?
And you're like, okay. And he's like, oh, it finally happened, Marie. And you realize this is her husband, Adam. And she has forgotten that he exists. And so the story is, and I actually really love the premise of this, because it's like, oh yeah, how does that, that's crazy. How would that work? How would we navigate this situation where you have forgotten your husband? And we get flashbacks throughout this chapter to how they originally met, which was basically like, there was this crazy monstrous growth of fingers in a hospital that he was able to see because he has a slight immunity to antimemetic things, and she was like an agent on the job, and they like were both super competent when they were young. And he's a violinist, which I loved, that his job is just so totally normal and beta male. It's like, I'm a violinist, yeah, I have a super badass wife, what's up?
Headlining concert violinist. Give him his flowers, William. And they bond in all of this chaos and body horror of fingers on fingers on fingers. They bond, but you're right, it is. And also I like its placement here because we've already seen a character forget a huge chunk of his life. And it kind of like hovers in the background, and so kind of seeing the ramifications of it, and there's a point where like they take Adam in, she goes to work and she's talking to one of her employees, and she's like, who is that guy? And so he reads the file and he was like, this is it. And she's like, no, the short story. And he's like, he's your husband. I've met him before.
We all remember him.
We know him. And she's like, no. Like what? Like, and she's having a hard time because she, having not fallen in love with him and having no space in her life for it, cannot even imagine having a relationship And there's this point where like they've put Adam, they first off, they interrogate my poor boy Adam in a very cruel way where like they just keep asking him the same questions over and over until he literally passes out at the table and falls, and he tries lying, telling the truth, not answering, like he's just done. And he wakes up and he's in like a fake little apartment.
Pod. So before that, I should say there's a lot of really good characterization that goes on even at the distance from Marie by what she doesn't do and what she doesn't act like. And because like she asks the guy who comes to tell her information, like, do I like him? And he's like, yeah, you like him a lot.
Yeah. Because she asked, did you like him? And he's like, nah, I don't really care for Adam. He's kind of full of himself. And she's like, did I? And he was like, and there's a look on his face. And the way the book describes it is so beautiful where the guy thinks about it and his face softens in this very human way. And he's like, yeah, you really like him.
And you can tell, my baby.
My baby.
and again, it's we're not suddenly given a lot of emotionality from Quinn, but we as the reader suddenly feel a lot of her pathos in a way that's very clever, but keeps the distance tone. And so we get these flashbacks with Adam thinking about this thing, and then she goes to see him. And he's like, it's okay. I know it's weird, but you'll put yourself back together over time. The same thing she said to Lee. You know, you take the nest sticks again and you'll get the memories back. And she goes, I don't want to. I don't have space for that in my life. And he's like, yes, you do. We have this life together. And what I thought was this was going to be one of those stories where it's like, if I want to operate at my best level, I can't have personal attachments. Like, I thought it was going to be that kind of a story, which I hate because that's a great way to read complete professional deterioration. That kind of view of like, oh, personal relationships. No, you really need personal relationships to function at your job. That work-life balance, as they say. But that's not the direction it goes in. I think.
So
next.
Yes. So what happens is as they're having this conversation, because he's like, man, Sunshine did it. He eventually, and he was like, it's so weird. He never takes. And she's like, he doesn't take what I don't let him take.
Sunshine is the one that took the memory.
Yeah.
Of him from her.
Yeah. And because she's like, why don't I remember like this? And they're talking about Sunshine, and he was like, Sunshine must have died. And she's like, no, I have Sunshine very well controlled. He only takes what I tell him to take. And you kind of realize, oh shit. Did you do this on purpose, babe? Did you do this on purpose? And as they're talking, Adam begins to feel weird. There's a light in his eye. Let me tell you, a lot of shit happens with eyes. And because he knows about
and
Sunshine.
Fingers.
Yeah, he knows about Sunshine. He reads the book with like he'll do stuff with Quinn for Sunshine. Sunshine is kind of like the dog they live with. He loves there's a TV show he likes watching that they like game shows and stuff like that. They have to read him random shit that he gets to nom. And then as this is happening, Adam realizes something and she realizes something. And he's like, no, please don't do this. Because one of the things he asks her before this is, what do you remember? Like, if you don't remember me, what do you remember about your life? And she's like, thinking about it, and it's all just like work, driving home, gym, eating, work, driving home. And he's like, you don't remember any of the good stuff. You just have the bad stuff. Like, you need the good stuff to be a person. And then as his eye is beginning to feel weird and something's happening, he's like, no, please don't do this, Marie. Please don't. Like, you can't do this. You need me. When you get lost, I find you. That's like what I do when you like, that's what I'm here for. And she's like, no, and you realize she's having Sunshine eat his memories of her. She comes out of the containment pod and she's like, put him somewhere, get rid of everything, back up a life. Like, give him a fake life that kind of accounts for the past few years.
She also had stowed with him a very powerful nest stick, that's the Z class or something like that.
Not here.
Yeah, no, they mention it here. But she comes out with it. But yeah, basically the idea is she's like, no. He has to forget whatever happened to do with me. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because he also knows shit. He knows people are disappearing. Yeah. Like, he knows too much. And not because she's necessarily told him.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you keep forgetting about certain people and you're waging some kind of a war and you're not doing great, like, but I believe in you.
What war? Like, what war?
Yeah.
And he's like, the war, you're losing all these people. And she's like, what fuck? And you realize that just by virtue of listening, and he has a really good memory, he has pieced together stuff that current Marie Quinn barely remember. Also, she knows her name is Marie Quinn, and she's like, well, I guess that makes sense. Must have gotten
And
it
she's like,
somewhere. My
well,
name
it
was
could be
Sheridan.
a coincidence, but
Yeah. Um, and so she's like, he knows enough that whatever we're dealing with is potentially, and she's like, get rid of him. And then she's like, and then erase my memories of this conversation. So I don't even know, because like current her doesn't remember falling in love with Adam, but knows that Adam and knows that he was her husband. Like all of that needs to go. And you're just like, fuck, she's a fucking tank, you know? And
she's
it's
a
also,
badass.
yeah, it's also so crazy because we saw her use sunshine earlier to, take away someone's memory of something. And so there's great ways where this book sets up stuff earlier that comes up later.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way I read it, but you're probably correct, is that Sunshine was doing this on his own. He kind of knew something was happening, and he started acting out to protect them. And this is the first time he's like doing his like dog protection thing. But I think you're right that yeah, she's told Sunshine to start doing this.
Yeah, because he literally says, he looks at Mary and goes, "Don't do this."
Yeah.
And so
this is one I wanted to reread and then didn't get a chance to because the plot kind of took off afterwards. One thing I will say is I often talk in writing and in books about how everything you do has to serve like triple duty. So usually I mean like descriptions or backstory, but like this is a great example of a short story that, or a portion of the novel that pushes the plot forward, but is also really important for character. This is the emotional touchstone. This makes you feel so close to Marie and Adam and invested in them while kind of sneaking it under the table, so to speak. And this is going to be like one of the big stories before the plot really kicks into high gear. But this does both things very well. And this is a short book too. This is not a super long book, so it's quite masterful to do it that way. The next story is one where we're back with Lee, and Lee is like, Marie's like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And Lee's like, "Shit." When she says, "Do you have a minute?" that means an hour. Fine. And she's like, "I got to go to this one." It's basically like a isolation pod, like, essentially.
A ping, like her calendar is like, "You have to go do this," and she's like, "I don't even know what this is."
And what they figure out, it's like a pod that like you can't bring any memories into or out of, essentially. Like it's an isolation pod developed by Hicks, who's this guy who died like 60 years ago. And Lee's like, okay. And he's like, why do you do this if we don't know what's in there? And she's like, look, it's on schedule. You just got to trust yourself. Which is like, again, one of the fun things is that like they know they'll forget things, and so they have certain ways of doing things. Those are part of the book I really liked before the applied plutonium magic with more steps hits in the next couple chapters. But she goes into this pod, and this is basically where she has been telling herself about the spider that's coming. And at this point, they're down to like 60 members of the organization. And originally they were at like 4,000, and there were multiple campuses for the Antimemetics Division. And it was really, it's very chilling because the her that's talking to her is like, you're going to come here again in 60 days and you're going to be the last one, because 60 days after you see this, the spider is going to eat you all. You're going to all be dead. So like whatever you tried to do, this has to be it. This has to be what's done. And Marie's like, again, there's a nice character work where she's like, I don't like how defeated I am in this video. Yeah. Like, she's like, fuck that, no.
And the things like, and I'm worried about Adam. And she's like, who the fuck's Adam?
Yeah.
And there's a sense of like the Marie in the video has something to lose. And this Marie, she's like, I'm not a defeatist, bitch. I got this. And the idea that like she has been coming into this isolation chamber, because the other thing is this is the only room that I think it's 3135, whatever this thing is, cannot get into. It is not only hermetically sealed, and by virtue of when you come in, whatever you learn and you leave, you don't remember. It is the only way to study it and figure it out, but it also cannot get into this space. Because that's the other thing. If it knows you perceive it.
She thought it was a thing where it keeps whatever's in there contained, but it's actually, it keeps him out. It keeps things out.
Which is such a nice little subversion of like how we've come to expect things to work. And
well, it's also so sneaky because they never even left it to themselves. Again, there's a lot of really clever, like, how do you outthink something you can, like an idea that you can't even remember going on, that I really liked.
And there's also this nice moment of she's watching the Quinn in the video who's speaking, telling her all this stuff, and she sees that behind that Quinn is this giant, like on the wall, like a diagram of a giant spider creature, and like its mouth is kind of right, and she doesn't realize that it's right behind her. Like this is the mirror, and it's just this beautiful, because we know what spider creatures mean. We fucking know now. And she's like, okay, shit, this is gonna happen based on her timeline. This is whatever I do, and she's like, I have to get out of here, and I have to remember what's happening.
Well, because she looks and she like they've workshopped with a bunch of pictures and stuff and paper and whatnot, and like there's no way she having come here so many times, she has not figured out what to do. So she goes, okay, I got to get out of here with the memory, because this is basically it. Like I can't come back and figure it out. And her plan is so great, because her plan is, the only way this would have worked is at the very beginning, when we realized this was a problem, we had set up a solution for it. And we've heard a couple times about this one, like, stadium. It's not a stadium, but I think of it as, like, in the basement, there's this one area where nobody goes, and nobody has gone for a while, and nobody really, like, even remembers why. And she's like, okay, whatever thing we created to solve this problem when it happens must be there. And the thing is, she doesn't even know that this is going to work, but she's like, well, this is the only thing that could have worked, and I have to trust how I used to think about this.
Yeah. And she's like, I have to trust that I'm a problem-solving bitch, and that problem-solving bitch me solved this problem, and I just gotta put my faith in me. Can I just say, Marie is just so the great. Fucking best. She's just like, I'm a competent ass bitch. There's no way I haven't given enough time, thought this through. So she starts running, but she now remembers he exists outside of the containment pod, which means 3135 or whatever his number is, I keep forgetting, knows about her, and he's doing a heck of
one thing we forgot is that what happens is the people she knows will then be infected with the idea just through like proximity. So like the first thing that happens is she gets out, and Lee is taken over by the spider and tries to kill her. And she has to like fight him, and all the anti-memetics people are like
and start like, they become unhumans. There's this idea of unhumanity, and she's like running, she's like, I gotta get to the fucking basement. And she gets to this basement, and there's a truck, and there's a thing on it that she's never, like, your eyes kind of glaze off on it originally, and she realizes this is a memory bomb. This is like the atom bomb, but it's for memories. And she's like, if I hit this, like, there's it, and she's like, this isn't a solve. This is a band-aid. This isn't going to solve the problem, but there's nothing else to be done. Like, it is taken over.
My understanding, and I may be wrong about this, was that this was sort of a self-deletion bomb that was created at the beginning of the division to wipe out the division if something bad happened. But the problem is that, like, it wasn't, she was right in that there was something there that they had planned, but it wasn't the right thing. And it's really tragic, because this is it. This is all she can do is trigger this bomb as these not humans show up.
But she has memories of going to the pharmacy, fighting the pharmacist, and getting a drug. And we think she's taken whatever it is. And she has taken something to kind of fight against this idea. But because there's literally, she can't remember. It's written so well with how it unveils that she fought the pharmacist and got these drugs. And then the book kind of lays that for you and doesn't go into it. But she has to set the bomb off as this creature. Like, there's a bunch of different infected people, will say, coming around her, and she sets the bomb off and dies. Like, goodbye, Marie. It was a great time.
I wasn't sure if she was gonna stay dead or not. I'm gonna be honest. I was like, there's 50-50 she stays dead or not, because like, she's the main character and we're halfway through the book.
Yes, exactly.
Essentially. And then the next chapter is actually kind of a side story where it's Marie at some point having talked to an unknown that's basically, it's a Sumerian god that eats the memories of how to ride a bicycle. And they're like, if you're a Sumerian god, what were you doing all this time? And their assumption is nothing. But this unknown's explanation is that actually there is a cycle of people learning how to make bicycles, it eating all of those thoughts, and then waiting until people develop it again. And he refers to it as the bicycle cycle. But basically, mostly you just go in and you talk to it. And and he's like, hey, do you want some drugs? And she's like, you can't get me drugs.
His name is Gua. And it's funny because, like, you get the feeling that this is currently the only friend Marie
Mm-hmm.
has. And it's literally called Marie's God. That's what this chapter is, or Quinn's God. That's what the chapter is called. And she's just having, and he was like, babe, you need a vacation. And she's like, I don't have time for a vacation. He's like, can you do an afternoon? Because go home. I'll get some drugs. And she's like, you can't get substances. And he's like, I'm cool. I know someone. And it's just so funny that this, like, and it's a god in a rock. It's in this little rock. And he's like,
They're girl talking.
yeah, I can
Essentially.
get you. I'm cool. I know someone. I got a hookup. And then he was like, well, what about alcohol? Just go get blindingly drunk, babes. You need a break from your own mind. You need to get out of your head. You're exhausted. And she's like, nah, I can't be so inebriated that if something happens. And he's like, you know what? Go home. Make love to your husband. And she's like, you know what? Well, actually, no. She pauses. So, and that's the other thing you have to remember. A lot of this stuff is happening out of timeline. So obviously this Marie in here is pre-Adam wipe.
Yes.
And the vibe I got was this was the moment Marie decided to wipe Adam.
I could see that.
So because how I read
She
it,
comes
and I
in
don't know.
defeated, yeah.
Yes, because it's that defeated. What I assumed is that there was the Marie from the video in the containment pod talking. She comes to Gua. She's girl chatting, and he's like, "You need your husband," and she's like, "Oh shit, I do need my husband, but in a way that's not sex." And and she starts crafting the plan that will eventually come to fruition. And you don't catch it on the first go round. But as I was rethinking about it, I think this is the moment. I think because she immediately just leaves. She doesn't even say goodbye. And because when you first read it, you're like, she's gone home to have sex with her husband. And I'm like, that was only because if you think about it, that was only 60 days before the version of her that doesn't remember Adam goes in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. This is more than anything, I was a little puzzled by the placement of this because it feels weird to have right after she died and what we understand that the world is gonna, explode or whatever. And like I feel like maybe this should have come earlier, but on the other hand, you need a breather before the next part of the story. So I guess it's okay to have put here. I don't know. This is one of those things where like I would have liked to see this in the short story collection of like, oh, this is just a weird part of the world. But I think you're right that it reads better if you understand this to be the moment she decided to save Adam.
Yeah. And not just save Adam, but save Adam in a way that he would be able to come back and get the thing. Like her and Sunshine crafted a plan. Like there's this is the fruition of this is the moment that everything else is going to happen.
December says, I love how most of her plans are past me will have done something about that.
Yep.
And yeah, really that's what you got to do.
And Eldritch Vesper says, I love that the author made her 50 years old too, not overconfident 21-year-olds here. And Chris M says in the first version, she dies and goes to a sort of science heaven where they exist depending on living people remembering them. I'm glad that's gone. That would have been too much. That would have been too much. No, I still have problems with how the ending plays out.
Yes, we'll talk about that. But the next short story, or the next chapter, because we're really past the short story format here. Well, actually,
everything is still short stories. They're still contained little chapters that don't. They never just lead into each other.
Well, there's this one, and then you get the plot to the end. Mm-hmm. So in this one, there's an agent who goes to see a streamer who has been streaming like a bad meme idea, and he like beats up the streamer and is like, okay, we sent out an anti-meme to your viewers, but you like obviously we're gonna have to do some kind of like and I actually liked this. They had some kind of like weird spiral what's it called? I don't know, some kind of weird fractal spiral thing that would unclog their brain. Yeah, and I liked that, because that's like kind of plausibly scientific as an anti-meme thing. It's like, it's a little sci-fi, but okay, that kind of, weird things with shapes and memory.
And they were rebooting his mind and just kicking whatever entity was in it. And they were like, get out of here. And they were thinking about, they called this guy Red. They did not refer to him by his name. And he was like, we know he's like, I think the actual guy is in there. And he starts talking to the guy that's inside being controlled. And then all of a sudden, like the guy kind of comes to once after they do the spiral light thingy. And he's like, what happened to your partner? And our main guy that I think his name James Bess. Bess goes, "Did I have a partner?" And he's like, "Wait a minute, the organization." And he's part of the Memetics Division. He's not anti-meme. He's Memetics, and he's like,
Mm.
"They would have sent me with two people." And then the narrator tells you his partner was actually around the corner, already captive in whatever thing is happening, and screaming silently into the void. And you're like, "Oh fuck, Bess, you're fucked." And then the guy who was like on a bed in a fetal position, unable to move, is suddenly standing and smiling at him, and like.
And he goes for his gun, and the guy takes away his memory of how to use his hands. And so his hands are just stumps in his understanding of the world. And that to me is like one of the coolest parts of the book, that like you could just forget how to use your hands. And like he like is like, okay, you didn't really stop me. I'm evil. Ha 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 ha. Eldritch Vesper says, I read the streamer's Asmongold based on the description of how gross his room is. That's so funny if you know who Asmongold is. Especially because the implication is that the streamer like kind of knew what was gonna happen, but like made a deal with the devil a bit. But which I didn't love. That felt like it was doing too much. That's like a hat on a hat. That's too much.
That I will say feels like a hat on a hat.
Yeah, like what? But this is a really creepy chapter because you're like, oh shit, yeah, Marie wasn't able to stop him. It slowed it down, but now it's manifesting.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful point where Bess slumps down and he looks at the creature in this guy and he says, "You think you're in control, but it's going to kill you too. We can get you out. You can help us contain it." Red crouches, still grinning. "Look at me. Look." Bess looks. He doesn't have a choice. It hurts. Red makes sure he's being heard loudly and clearly. "No." And it's just such a good scene. It's a good scene.
We should also say it was creepy when he was on the talking to the intern or whatever. He's like, "I hate you. Like, I don't like you." That's one of the things that the old boss had originally said, is like, he just hates anyone who can perceive him.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about, up until this point, I think red, which I guess is the big bad, or green is the big bad.
Big bad.
I thought until now he was creepy. The nature of him that gets revealed towards the end of the story, to me, felt a little bit like, not dumb exactly, but it just felt like, okay, you just kind of went for an evil thing more than a weird thing. Mm-hmm. But next story is Adam. Adam is a really cool single guy, just living off the violin. He's been traveling around. He's like, it's weird. People have been like posting these black squares on Instagram, and it doesn't mean anything. Odd.
Yeah.
Oh. Plus this. Oh, okay. We'll talk about that in a second. But he's like, that's weird. And so he's playing a violin, and he looks, and suddenly he realizes everyone looking at him is looking at him in a way that's like not human, like they're different somehow.
He describes humans really weirdly, like if you know what
and then
he goes,
what? And then he remembered, oh, that's what humans have always looked like, because he describes them as like weird pillars of flesh. It was so
terrifying. Cool. Let me tell you, what a good little, because you think, oh no, they've been transformed. No, but there's something inherently alien about them. Like we've hit uncanny. There's something uncanny, and they're all looking at him with the same face of hatred and dislike. And he's like, I gotta run. And so he runs and he goes to his dressing room, and there's a big black square on his mirror that he was seeing in all these videos. And then he realizes those videos didn't just come out. They've been out for ages. Like, they've been around for a while, and it's been weird. And basically everyone on the planet kind of got hive-minded into like whatever green is, the weird spider thing, and has like remade human existence in like a weird way.
Yeah, and the people who are tracking him down, they hold him down and they have a chisel, or I think pliers, and they're like, he's made wrong, we have to fix it. And the pliers go for his hand, and they're like, should we do his fingers or his eyes first, is the implication that they're gonna like remake him or whatever. And then we have an extended period of redaction with just like a few words sprinkled in of like slime, gross, make horrible, he saw, like those kinds of things, which again doesn't the book has not been not using the structure to show the story up until this point, and this is not a diegetic narrative, so to me it was like, okay, this is cheating a little bit, but okay. I did read on the author's website an unredacted version of this that he has as like a deleted chapter,
Ooh.
and I think he should have kept that in. It's super fucking creepy and actually helps a lot of the problems, or not a lot of the problems, some of the problems I have with what's going to happen next. But I'll talk about that at the end because I don't want to. I kind of want to keep where we were at when I was reading it. And then we see that Adam, a ray of sunshine comes, and he gets pulled out, and basically he's spat back out of whatever fugue state he was in, and he sees that his hand is missing its fingers. He'll never be able to play violin again. But they're also healed, so it's been a while. And everything around him it's like apocalypse style. There's some kind of warren of tunnels at the center of the city, and U5, whatever, is standing just this huge black figure that's also incredibly thin on the horizon.
Like it's just this like monolithic spider creature just slowly walking, terrifying.
And the first thing he does is he's kind of drawn by a glint in his eye to a library where he starts reading trivia.
Yeah,
he can't remember the trivia when he reads it.
He's like, oh, I have to read to whatever thing is with me. And he says, like, is this good? And you realize Sunshine's there, and Sunshine's saving him.
Because Sunshine needs somebody else around, because Marie no longer around, and it hungry.
And it also, Sunshine have feeling. Sunshine have fondness. And so Sunshine finds our boy, and you get the idea that whatever he can no longer remember, Sunshine took one for the team.
Yeah, because it was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. He likes good shit. Sunshine likes nice little trivia, watching shitty shows, little bits of harmless, like making a cup of coffee, like those moments where you're like, you drive home and you're like, how did I get home? Like that kind of shit. That's what Sunshine likes. So Sunshine took one for the fucking team, bros. Sunshine in a best unknown. That Eldridge Vesper just said that.
Yeah, it was pretty great. And I liked too is like, oh, that kind of makes sense in that like the thing that could defeat, or not defeat, but could screw up the big bad's plan is like this other small entity was just like, I'm hungry and I want. Yeah. It's like, again, it's like a dog being like, feed me, I want to go home. So basically he realizes Sunshine is leading him somewhere. He wants him to go someplace, but he's really unclear about it. And so he starts trekking across the gray apocalypse. And I did not love this. Here's the thing.
Tell us.
Up until this point, there's been such an existential horror of like, what is this big, bad, unknown green going to do? Like, it's like unspeakable horrors, right? And then what it ends up is we don't get to see any unspeakable horrors, and we don't even get intimated of what they are. Like the idea of like them taking pliers to his hands to fix him into the correct shape, terrifying. But like, what's going on with the people now? Where are they? Did he collapse the mimetic and physical world? So like in the way that guy forgot how to use his hands. Like I thought that would have been cool. He was collapsing dimensions or something like that. We got the implication that he hates things that can see him, but then it was too unclear. And that's the thing is like, it was left too ambiguous to know what was, it was too unclear to me to be really horrible.
Correct. There was a point where someone says, and I don't remember who it is, but one of the characters is thinking and says that 3125 makes humanity the worst of itself. And it gives a little like a thing. And I'm like, I wish we could see that, because I think the book is trying to do the thing where like if you don't see it, it's less scary. But unfortunately, what it does is it's just our boy Adam trekking across the UK, following,
and there's no one around, and it's just a little depressing.
And the sun is not yellow, it's red, and it doesn't move. And there is this like chatter. There's this, and Adam took so long to turn originally because he has subtle antimemetic like something in his brain, resistance that is there, and that's one of the reasons why he originally saw all those hand things that nobody else saw. And kind of sparked him and Marie and all of that stuff, but it's what made it so it took so long. And then also, as he's trekking through this world, he's not kind of falling back into, once our boy Sunshine took one for the team, he's not kind of falling back into like whatever this thing, but like something about the world has fundamentally changed. And you're completely correct, Will, that I really wish we could have seen more of this, because we're building up towards being safe, like finding a solution towards it, but we never. And I'm actually now really upset that there is a whole chapter, because at first I thought it was just like, we're not supposed to remember it because Adam doesn't remember it. But if it's like there and you can read it, just put it in the fucking book.
So do you want me to spoil what it is? Because I actually do. The thing about it is, like, you would think like, oh, the thing you can't see is more horrible than the thing you can see. The way the author writes it's fucking awful. So one thing I will say is that I dislike that the big bad, he makes us the worst version of ourselves. Why? Why is this the anti-meme that got out? I liked it better that he was the pure anti-meme of just, he didn't want anyone to remember him, and when people remembered him, he ate them because he didn't want them to be around. Or even like, he is a being from a different dimension than he's trying to collapse the dimensions. That's not in the book, but that's a thing I think would be cool. It's a thing where like, he's not just pure evil, whereas the big bad is essentially just pure evil. Because what happens is, it starts with, basically the author says that he would rewrite this probably if he had put included in the book, but he wanted to just do a very rough draft so he knew what he was redacting. Mm-hmm. They go after his fingers, and it's described how they pull the metacarpals, and Adam is screaming. Like, it is actually a really good description of how painful that would be, and how much hates him for resisting a little bit, and it was pointless. And then it ends up that basically the big bad doesn't take over everybody. He just takes over some people so that they can make other people suffer. And they basically channel people into these warrens where they just do a lot of blood, guts, creativity type of stuff, and just like awful body horror, gore stuff. And Adam is doing these things, and he's slowly coming back to himself, even as he's like sawing people in half and stuff like that. And he escapes without Sunshine is the weird bit, but I'm assuming that would have been fixed in a rewrite or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like, especially the part about him being taken with his fingers is just fucking gnarly. It made me depressed for the rest of the day. But I don't like this, because it's like, okay, well, it does help figure out what the fuck is going on, because really, it's in the actual book, it's just like, well, it's gray,
and nobody's there. Nobody can see anyone.
Yeah, it's one of these things where the book has been very good about the implication being awful without showing the thing, but here it's like there's not enough of an implication. There's just no implication.
At first I thought, because there's this one point, and I was trying to find it, because I listened to this, but I also read, like, I had an ebook version, and there was a point where somebody says it made it so you could no longer see the humanity in other people. And the implication was that was the great, and it says this, and that like that's the true great crime of 3125, is that it makes you. And I thought, ooh, is this commentary about what social media does to people, what the internet does to people? That we are so removed, because now we interact with people at this such removed state where they are effectively in another realm from us, that we no longer see the humanity in them, or that like this is one of the fundamental flaws of humanity, is that we can collectively stop seeing other people as human
yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and because I think it might be when Adam is watching the Quinn recording, but I don't know. Or it might be when when we get him and he's thinking about stuff. But literally somebody's like, yeah, and the great crime is it made us stop seeing people as people and stop having like emotions. And it doesn't say empathy, but it made me think of that Lindsay Ellis video that came out, where she talks about how like we're like
there's an active assault on the idea of empathy among the right wing.
And so for me in that moment I was like, ooh, fascinating. And honestly, that is more terrifying but it also, I guess, computes into it makes people able to do these terrible things to other humans because they no longer see them as human, and that's the crime that's happening. But that's, for a second I was like, ooh, that feels, number one, close to home and makes me very depressed and sad and I hate it. But also like, so I wish that had maybe been expanded more. And on one hand, crazy that he wrote all that stuff and we just don't get any of it. But also, I'm also glad I don't want to read that.
I'll be honest. Yeah, it was a lot. I don't know why, but it hit. And the thing is, you guys know I like horror. I like reading terrible shit, but that also hit me weirdly hard. I don't know if it's maybe because like we have such an attachment to Adam. But again, some of the implication needed to be there. It didn't work.
Oh, that's so funny. Judo Shri goes, it's Twitter, the thing that makes humanity the worst version of yourself, which just is what I was talking about.
Yep. Nope. That is very, very correct.
Yeah.
But back to the actual events. Adam is just trudging through the landscape. He eventually gets to the Antimemetics Division building. He's able to pierce through,
which is where Quinn was.
There's a funny bit about how he reads through all the unknowns and finds it oddly compelling and binge-worthy. And you're like, oh, okay, that's an SCP reference. Very cute. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's eventually able to get into the chamber that was the one blocking out the ideas that Quinn left for him. And he's like, oh, okay, that's kind of what happening. I don't remember you, but there's a very great sense of like sadness to it that he doesn't remember her, and he goes down and finds her body next to the exploded bomb. And Sunshine is so sad. Sunshine, that's what he was leading him to this whole time, was Quinn. And he's so sad, and Sunshine, essentially, every memory of the two of them that he had eaten, he pushes back out into Adam. So Adam remembers everything. All of the good stuff.
Fucking got me. I'm not...
I could
cry just thinking about it. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's because those are all the memories that Marie had forgotten, that by the end of her and Adam together,
like, there's one where he's putting her hair behind her ear, making coffee, like...
Yeah, it's really, and the thing is, you feel also for Sunshine, this kind of primal scream, this, again, Doggo essentially is giving for its family. And also I thought it was clever because it's like, oh, okay, that's actually a really kind of interesting way of dealing with this problem of how are we gonna go forward
deal with it.
And yeah, go ahead.
He also finds in Marie's hand like a syringe with a needle that has stuff in it, and he takes it. And he realizes that whatever thing, because he has put together so much stuff, because U-3125 is out now, he can just read everything and kind of put together everything. And he's also discovered that there is other locations. So this was
right.
UO Wiley. There's other ones, and he's like, no. Quinn was right, or Marie was right. There was a place where, because basically Quinn was like, the way to defeat this is to create another idea so powerful that it can overtake, but that would take like 20 years. You would have to do it in like a secret giant bunker somewhere. And that's what Quinn thought. Quinn thought that was what was in the basement, and then it ended up being the bomb. And he was like, no, Quinn was correct. It's just at a different location. There's this other location that records refer to. And so that has to be where, and he's like, I have to go there. So him and, Sunshine begin to head out. And before he can get too far, a man comes up to him and is like, why can't, because he comes out of, there's a kind of an antimemetic field around UO Wiley. And as he comes out of it, there is someone there waiting for him who said, why did I just lose you? Why can't I? You're not one of us. And it's Red, the guy from earlier in the chapter with that agent from the Memetics Division. And he's like, something's up with you, buddy. What is this? Also, something Quinn Marie had with her was this gun that is an unknown. It has a number and everything, and it like erases things. Like it'll just,
it's like a laser.
That just erases the thing you shot at. But it'll only, like, it has its beam, and it'll only, so if you shoot it at half someone's head, it's just going to take whatever piece it was shot at. And he shoots the guy. And he had no idea. And he literally stops and throws up, and then he's like, no, I need to finish this. I need to make sure he's dead. He shoots him again.
You forgot.
Oh, yeah, I did. Oh my God. Go.
He's reaching for his gun to pull it up, but by doing that, he has made the big bad realize the big bad can see you when you see it. So there's no way he was going to get up in time. But Sunshine was so pissed off, it went to attack the big bad, and the big bad swatted it away very easily and snuffed it out. But it was just enough time for him to get shot and defeated.
Yeah.
But Sunshine, no more.
Yeah,
The
and
dog,
it's so sad
but
because he's like Sunshine would disappear before, but he hasn't come back, and you realize Sunshine sacrificed himself to save Adam because he liked Marie and he liked Adam, and it's just and also like
uh,
they gotta save the world because otherwise there's no juicy memories. Like it's really hard to be a memory eating monster, and there's only one guy you can eat memories from.
and they're like, well, he may not be dead because he may not actually have been able to die,
So
but like
bye,
he's
yeah,
gone for now, and
yeah.
you're like, oh.
And so our guys like, or do you have something? What were you gonna say?
No, so he goes. He's gonna set out, and then we get another chapter that's a flashback to like 40 years before, and it's Hicks. And Hicks is the guy who we realized like people had mostly forgotten about, but he was doing some really important technology stuff. That's the one she thought had built the anti-meme weapon, the anti-meme weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he is in the corpse of one of those who walk slowly, the big sauropods who can like not
Yeah.
who people can't remember, and he's in
Like
the skeleton
cryptid
of one.
gigantus, I think.
Yeah,
Something like
Gigamorphous
that.
or something like
Yeah.
that. And basically, they're gonna go. He goes into its skull, which is a meeting place where basically nothing can get in or out of. It basically is like shielding, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
like
kind of
thought
like
shielding.
previous version of the room that Marie worked on, and basically it's a place where you can talk about 3125, but and because eventually it's so interesting to see because this obviously is happening like 10 years 20 years ago, and so we have like a young Marie Quinn. But this is their version of the room Marie had before they had invented this version of the room, or like her version. And basically those giant creatures, because they have those like you can't perceive them, their bones have something fundamentally antimemetic in them, which is really cool.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but this is where I really started to dislike the magic with more steps, because having just a material that can stop ideas in the physical world, it kind of makes sense insofar as like the book has done the work to kind of show that there's more anti-reality stuff going on in our world than we realize. Like there's one point where Marie, the drug she took made her see everything all the time, and she realized that the world's covered in like slugs that we can't remember. Like we realize towards the end of the book that like this is not our world with a few weird things. This is a very weird world, but we only remember the our version of it. Kind of, but like it's a magic substance that we can now use to stop it. We don't have to be creative and come up with human ways of stopping it. This was actually, I remember, such a problem with the SCP universe that one of the guide rules became you can't have SCPs interact with each other. That's no longer a thing that's allowed because people kept doing it in a way that was very annoying. And like it kind of ruins the thing of it. Like mystique. They also have like they have like gut the flora from the Gigantosaurus that you put on your brain, your face, and it like will eat. It'll keep your memories as like a barrier.
Yeah, like
and I was like, okay,
your mind
we're losing.
Kind of,
yeah, we're losing the basic idea of how do normal humans deal with this crazy thing. And
I will say, I agree that as much as I kind of liked some of this, and I like Hicks as a character, and I like the conversation they have in the room.
Yes, the scene, it's good. Yeah,
I didn't love like all of the like accoutrements of this. You're right. It is a little hand wavy as far as like how this stuff works. But basically, he's like, okay, he has to go into this meeting. Everybody else has been there a while before him. He gets put on his little germ thing that it'll make it so when they can't erase his memories because all of the memories were happening in the germ brain. And he goes in and they're like, hey, there's this big terrible thing. And they gave him like a 2-page paper, like front and back, that has math on it that basically tells him about U3125. And he best understands it in this math formula that is just terrifying. And I love the way it was written. Like he reads it and he's like, oh, fuck. And he can almost feel U3125's like as he looks at the math and he's like, oh, we got to deal with this. And he's kind of talking through things and you realize he's had this conversation a ton of times and the people around him remember it, but this is kind of his first time remembering it. And they're kind of talking him through it and he's like kind of talking about what needs to be done. And they were like, yeah, you said we should create a bunker and make a machine. And Marie Quinn is there and she's talking to him as well. And and I also like the idea of being able to look at a problem with fresh eyes after you've kind of thought it to death, kind of thing. And that's kind of what they're doing with Hicks. And basically, they're like, yeah, we built the bunker. Your entire team's there, just waiting, you know. And he was like, well, who's going to lead it? And they were like, it's you. You have to lead it. And he's like, I'm not spending 20 years away from the. He's like, whatever past fucking version of me agreed to this was a fucking idiot. I like the sun. Find someone else. And they were like, okay,
there's such a funny moment where he's like, you can't do this to me. I have a, and then he paused because he realized he didn't have a family.
Yeah.
That's the thing is the book is very funny in little moments like that. Yeah.
And they were like, okay, who would you put? Who could do it? Who could do this? And he's like, oh shit, they're really, and this one guy gets up, and I forgot what his name is, but it might have been Sloss, but he's like head of the, because like there's also an executive there, and it's Malo, the guy from the beginning of the book, like that we saw Quinn interact with, and so this is obviously like 20 years before that happened, and it's a young Marie, and she
she realizes
Sloss,
this.
yes, yeah. Sloss is like, you're the only one that could do this. You're the only one. And they were like, he's like, yeah, fuck, I am the only one. And then Sloss shoots him in the fucking face. Or shoots him, I think, in the chest. But anyway, he dies. Hicks is dead. And everyone's like, oh, fucking, what the hell? And they realize that Sloss has been taken in by U-3125. And we also realized earlier that or somebody in chat, just because I didn't pick this up before, but Sloss was the boss of James Bess from that earlier chapter, who first interacted with Red and like the streamer, that whole thing. And so he was compromised by U-3125, and he kills him. And so Quinn kills that guy, and she's like, oh shit, that means it could be anywhere, because prior to this they thought he just killed people and vaporized people, and so now he's obviously dealing the way U-3125 is operating is different. We're at like another stage of how he's handling shit. Like originally he was just like, stop perceiving me. And then he was like, you know what, humanity, I'm just gonna apparently torture you in warrens under the ground. You know, and so he's kind of building up to that. And they were like, oh shit. And she's like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And they were like, Hicks is dead. And she's like, it's okay, I'll think of something. I'll think of something. And meanwhile, the little germ octopus thing on Hicks is like, well, sucks, my body died. And basically, Hicks's mind is still in, because that's how this thing works, where your mind goes into
it's what they call like an air gap, which is like if you have a computer and you never hook it up to the internet, there's an air gap. It's never been connected. And so this is what that germ was doing. It was creating an air gap between what's happening and the person being able to perceive it. But that means their brain is in there for a little bit, essentially. Yeah. And they had created a clone of Hicks to die in an accident. And so this little, like, I thought of it as like an octopus. Just like, and goes over to his body and takes it over. And then Hicks runs to go to the bunker because they're going to set off a no bomb. And it's so funny because there's a point where in this part, Marie goes, yeah, they only had one of these no bombs left. Each time they used it, they couldn't remember. They remembered less and less of how to build them. And you're like, oh shit, this is a thing you don't even remember happening. Again, the book is so funny because it does that consistently, and it never really gets old. This like, oh, there was a thing that happened, but they have forgot it now, and we're now revealing it.
Yeah, the Quinn we saw at the beginning did not remember this at all, but this Quinn does.
And so Hicks ran into the bunker, and for 20 years now he's been building the anti-memetic weapon, and he's kind of going a little crazy. He keeps having to reset his memory because living on your own for 20 years is not a healthy thing to do, but he's also realizing each time he does that he's getting worse, and so the thing about this is, like, again, I don't like the applied plutonium magic with more steps of the weapon also that we're going to talk about, but like all of this like anti-meme magic and science, and like I also felt like this was a weird thing to include in certain ways because it's kind of unneeded. Like, you don't really need this to understand what's going to happen next. A lot of this Hicks could have just told Adam in like 2 paragraphs.
Yeah,
you know, like, it's not a bad scene, but it's something that like could be kind of snipped out and you don't really lose anything.
Yeah, I agree. It's because, like, I like the conversations, but the stuff around it I don't love as much. I think you're completely correct. And you're right. This is the stage for me where I was like, we're gonna get to a scene in a bit where I'm like, this
Mm,
has jumped the shark a little bit for me, you know, where like
yeah.
we've kind of gone a little too far, one could say. Um,
Yes.
and the other thing is everyone thinks Hicks is dead. Nobody knows that his consciousness was able to get into an octopus, get into his dead clone body. Like, and the body's alive, but it's a clone of himself that they use a different unknown to make. And he's been doing the work this whole time. So again, earlier when our girl Quinn was like, we must have built a bunker, somebody must have been working on this. Thank God this weird thing happened with Hicks.
I thought, see, the thing is, I thought originally this chapter was going to point out, oh no, they tried, but it didn't. Like that's where this chapter would have a function of, no, that was a smart idea and we tried it, but here, this thing you've been depending on for hope in the last half of this book is not real. But it just happened in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
And like, that's why it's kind of a plot cul-de-sac.
Yeah. And the other thing we learn about this is that Adam is actually quite smart. Like, you know, because he was able to put together that, like, somebody's been working on this and it's probably Hicks. Like, once he's able to assess everything that is set out before him and he has time to do so, like, at this point, there's no rush. The thing already happened.
Mm-hmm.
The bomb went off. He's got all the time to process, and he does. And it's really like, you know, Adam's a smart guy. But now he has to go to the other UO location.
Really quick, Bananamus says, sounds like it's mostly there to have twists and attempt to keep the reader on their toes when the plot is struggling to keep them. I think actually what this is this is a vestigial part of it originally being a serial, which is this guy is telling the story as he's writing it, and so he kind of wants to know what happened in the past. And like, if you're reading this in serial form, oh, this is really cool, I now know a little bit more backstory. It's like, if you think about the experience of reading this as it's coming out, this is fine. It's just in the final structure that you don't need it.
And I think another thing to speak to that is if it is plugged into the whole arc of like the SCP Foundation, some of the weirdness of it might be like, oh yes, I'm familiar with the ones who walk away and the weird germs that are used. Like, there might be like some stuff that play. Okay, no. Sorry.
By the way, Chris M says the first version had Hicks's consciousness grow into a germ the size of a building. I actually like that. That's cool. I mean, if as long as we're going to be doing dumb science stuff.
Yeah.
So Adam gets to Hicks, basically.
Yeah. He gets in. With Quinn's ID card, which opens everything. Every door. Yeah.
And Hicks like puts him into like a dream, a simulation VR setup, and he's where they're like in a memory of the one time the two of them interacted at like a barbecue. And Hicks is like, I realized as I built the machine that I couldn't use it because I didn't have the idea that could kill Utah 525. And he's like, and also you don't have it. And Adam's like, okay, is it in England? Because if it's not, I don't want to have to go get it. And he's like, no, that's not how it works. We also figure out the big machine he's been building is not actually doing anything. It just looks like a big machine, which makes people feel like it can do something. Like, we're now at the clap if you believe stage of
that's entirely where we are.
And I hate that.
Where the idea of something being more important than the thing itself, like that's what. And
yes,
I understand it, but it doesn't work as well as it should. Like, because it does feel like, instead of feeling like we've been dealing with ideas and concepts this whole time, and this feels like a natural conclusion, it does feel magic with more stepsy. And I'm not sure. I would actually like to think about how to make this work, because again, the idea of having a concept where the idea of something is more important than its physical body, and and that's what uses it, that makes sense. But then for me, this is where we jump the shark. Okay, so I'm going to describe to you what happens. Hicks is like,
I was very emotional during all this, but I didn't like it.
Yeah,
like, I have notes.
Yeah, Hicks is like, oh, do you, and because in our boy's hand, Adam, he's been carrying that syringe with that stuff, and he was like, oh, Marie. Hicks is like, oh, Marie, what a smart ass girl. And basically, he injects our boy Adam. He puts him into the chair at the base of this giant machine thing, injects him with this thing, and you're like, what the fuck is happening? Because like, the book's like, we need Marie, but Marie's dead, and you're like, how the fuck are we gonna get Marie? And basically, this drug can make it so your ideas and like things in your brain can come out into a physical form. It's kind of like uh because previously we've heard about ideas eventually having physical forms, and this is the first time where you're able to like pull something. And he's like, I need you to think, Hicks is like to Adam, I need you to think of Marie and I need you to focus on her. So in Adam's brain, in this like, because it's basically like a simulation of the memory that he had been in, he sees Marie. And again, this isn't the Adam who was married to her. Like, it physically is, but it mentally isn't. But he knows that that was his wife, and there is this pull towards her, and he goes towards her and he's trying to talk to her. And Hicks is like, you need to focus on her. And basically, Hicks is trying to pull Marie out of
the
Adam's
idea
head.
of Marie from her memories that
and
were conceived
idea,
in Sunshine.
And also the idea from Adam as someone who saw the good. And like, there was a point earlier where Adam had told Marie, like, you're fighting this war, but you're going to win it. You know? And so like Adam also has a lot of hope associated. But anyway, so he pulls Marie out. And they have this beautiful reunion, and she's like, "You're going to die. What's been injected?" And he's like, "There's this there's this moment." So again, I don't like this. I don't like just pulling people out of memories, and that's how we solve
this is
things.
goofy to me. It's goofy to me, but it still is emotionally affecting because you really do love these characters.
Yes,
you really do like them.
Because there's this moment where he said, "You knew when you get lost, I come and find you," and you realize that she. Back in that moment, and again, my headcanon is back in that moment with Gua, when she's like, I need my husband. She realizes that if all this happens, he has enough antimemetic juice to be able to stay out of this, to come find me, find the vial, to be able to pull me out so that in the end, I can do this. And so she's relying on her smart, capable, and it just makes me think of that one guy who was like, he's a bit holier than thou and full of himself, and I'm like, Adam deserves all of that. And
he's pulling that out, and she remembered, and he's like, okay, what idea you're going to become? And she's like, it's really complicated, but basically it's freedom from fear, or fear is what I like. That's the thing. And the part of the problem is this book started in such a grounded, non-emotional way, and was like that for so long, that to have this kind of existential friendship is power ending feels really off to me. It just, I don't love it. Again, it's like, okay, I guess we're here. This kind of makes sense, but I don't love it. And he's basically like, I love you. And she's like, I love you, but I have to go become a star god. And she basically goes and becomes a star god and immediately defeats U55555, and then ascends to a higher plane of existence where, because otherwise she would crush humanity.
Yeah, because her idea, whatever idea she has, is also too powerful for humanity to handle it. And that's it. So Adam dies. Our girl's dead, but also an idea of her as a star god now. And the next scene, I believe, is Malo, the guy who is one of the executives, and he's going to the room that was mentioned at the start of the book, U0055, which we don't know. At the start of the book, it's just like, what's inside? And it's basically like a library with all these shelves, and it's a bit messy, and there's a desk, and at the desk there's a chair, and the chair is occupied. And that's as much as we get about whatever U0055 is. And Malo just monologues at this unknown and says, something has happened. We've lost about a year of time. There's certain portions of the planet we can no longer access. Humanity is just building around them like mountains or oceans. And people are missing a massive, and he was like, so something, a war, something happened, and we were able to overcome it, but we also lost a lot. Because in his mind, this was a loss. He doesn't fully realize or understand that this was the win. Like this was the win. And he's like, and how many times have we met and thought we need to do better? And we have to be better. And how many versions of us has there been? And it's just crazy, this being the guy at the start of the book who was like, there is no Antimemetics Division. um, and
Yeah.
and just kind of processing all of this and talking to U0055 and getting no response, and then just kind of having to continue. And the nice thing is about U0055 is it doesn't, you don't lose your memories of like what you said in the room. You just can't remember it or what it looks like or any of that.
I kind of assumed it was like the Star God version of Marie or something like that, like the her the amount of manifestation she could have or something like that. After I thought that it was the bicycle one. I thought it was that for a minute, and then I was like, "Oh wait, no, it's not the bicycle."
Oh, that's also really sad. There's a point where Adam goes into Gua, the bicycle god, the bicycle eating, and it's just a rock and it doesn't talk to him, and I'm like, "Oh, Gua, what happened to you, buddy?" And then,
that's the book.
Well, no, there's the ending scene is the giant. So it starts with something.
Oh, I blocked that part out.
It's very
there's a giant spider walking through the forest. Remember that was U9 whatever.
12
and then suddenly, okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna, because I
and
think
then
it's very lovely.
Basically what happens is that suddenly a mouth comes down and clamps on and eats the spider, and it's the Gigantopithecus. That's not what it's called.
Yeah,
but the ones who walk slowly.
Yeah, direct observation is harmful to Sela's species. Her mother died when she was a juvenile, killed instantly when an organization researcher took a close-up flash of her face. The organization thinks her whole species is extinct, wiped out by infertility and disease as an indirect result of exclusively close organization study. Excessively close organizational study. And I like this because it's somebody mentioned this in the chat, that the organization is as much a harm to the creatures that are it's studying as much as some of them can be to humanity. So Sela is a full-grown adult Cryptomorpha gigantus, a massive vertically elongated quadruped. As Malo's motorcade leaves Black River, she's standing just beyond the site's perimeter with a crumpled meta-spider in her mouth. She's unable to perceive the motorcade or the site itself any more than a human can perceive her. They only barely walk the same earth. The spider is a 200-meter-long bundle of legs, eyes, and chitin, long body parts dangling from each side of Sela's jaws. The spider convulses ineffectually. It can't escape. The spider population, once rampant, is now under control again. They were numerous and tasty, but the ones who walk very slowly have a broad diet. Sela bites down, biting through the last of the spider's leg, which begin to achingly slowly tumble to the ground. So the other awesome thing that I did like about this is that Sela, the gigantuses, used to eat whatever that was.
So, okay, this is what I don't like, is that it's confusing. The thing about this is it doesn't... So, hold on really quick. I have to have a cat moment. This is Gunpowder.
Oh my god, hello!
Gunpowder would like food. Gunpowder does not actually like to be petted, but he is very chill. Sometimes I sent Maria pictures of him just hanging around. He's very cute.
He's so cute. I love you, Gunpowder.
Yeah, I love Gunpowder. He's such a big derp. Okay, I don't like this because it's confusing. Because it's like, okay, wait a second. Is it that we... did we break the cycle that was normally happening and that's why whatever was able to get out? Was he the spider all along? Ellen thought there was like, oh, maybe this is kind of like a rebirth of Marie in a way, that like she's now the Giganticus or whatever. And like, I just don't... It feels annoying that it's like, oh... it just doesn't really work with everything else that's come before it thematically.
What I took it as is that, like, the gigantuses were eating these spider things that, if once they were perceived, would become an issue. But because there were so few of them, they were much less likely to be perceived and stumbled upon, and thus avoiding like all the shit that happened. But then when they killed all the gigantuses by observing them, then there was so many. And I think the spider is a hive mind. Is the spider the big bad we were dealing with this whole time? Or like, because she killed that in the big bad in the conceptual world or whatever. So yeah, St. John says I took it as a reincarnation of Marie. Yeah, especially because it mentions the mate and the child. And so I was like, it's confusing. Like ¿qué? Yeah.
So yeah. I would have liked it if it hadn't been the giant spider part. it would have
Yeah.
been like, oh, they're still alive. That's a really cute, kind of nice way of ending
Yeah.
it.
And Bananamus says it feels like a ham fisting. It feels like it's ham fisting a message that humanity did this to itself or whatever. And you're right. It doesn't work because the like is did she kill it or does it still exist in some form? Did it always exist and then there was too much of it? Like and you know
Yeah, and so like
and
that to
are
me just was
anti-memetic divisions actually the problem?
yeah. It just I think it's another example of the web serial nature of the original text not being cleaned up, and that like this feels like a fun little Easter egg if you're reading this, but like as a polished work where everything is supposed to mean something.
And St.
Yeah.
John says it is a nice parallel, though. The spider is dangerous to be perceived, while the giant anti-meme thing is helpful by being ignored. And I think again, I like on its own, I don't dislike it. I do think it did need to be polished up and how it connected to the rest of the story. Because I'm actually liking the idea of it being Marie because I didn't take it as Marie at all. I thought Marie's just tonight now a giant star in the sky, just like out there vividly vibing.
I think if there had been like one line where it said like, the giant spiders, whatever had been animating them and giving them energy was gone now, but they were still very tasty, or something like that, where it just cleared up the cosmology a little bit.
Exactly.
Of like maybe the tools for you, whatever, to take over were given by were in the spiders, and the spiders getting too strong was what gave it the ability. You know what I mean? Like something like that. But it also just makes it. I mean, in general, the end of the book feels too knowable. It's funny because, you know, earlier I said that I felt like he didn't give enough implication for the thing to be scary, and now I'm saying that he gave too much information for the thing to be scary. But like there's a very specific line this kind of thing has to ride, and I feel like this book, the ending doesn't quite do it. I want to reiterate, I think this is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Some of these things are like, I would do it differently, but I kind of see why he did it the way he did, kind of thing. Like even just having having it not be a short story collection, having it be have a real plot. The friendship is magic. That I don't think is really excusable. I really hate that.
Yeah. But I mean, I would agree. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, hot damn. I immediately, like halfway through, I told my husband, I was like, you have to read this. I think you would. And very rarely he was like, oh, that's nice. Like you're reading something you'd want to recommend to people. So it's I enjoyed the crap out of this. And it was a quick, easy read. Easy.
It's nicely creepy without being overwhelmingly so and depressing, like The Troop, for example. One thing I will say is at the beginning I said that I was a little disappointed, or I had expected the book for its structure to mirror the plot in the way that like House of Leaves does. Another good example of this is the movie Memento, where it's about a character who has short-term memory loss, and so the story is told from the last event linearly backwards in time to the first, to give you a sense of what it is like to be this character constantly popping into new moments without knowing anything that came before, and it's actually very nicely constrained because it's not, we don't need to know, the mystery is not, is he going to kill this person? The mystery is, he killed this person, but was it a correct decision? And that's what we're working back toward. It's Nolan at his best before he got bad with audio editing. And I think that like this book could have been more ambitious in that way, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. I think it's still, I understand why the author wrote it the way he did. I wish he had maybe workshopped it a little bit more into the published form from the web series. Yeah. I definitely like to read other stuff by him, though. I don't know if he's written much because I didn't look it up. But again, I really liked this book. I thought it was really good. Top 10 of all the ones we've read.
Yeah, no, I would say it would definitely go into and I'm going to remember it really, really fondly. It's one of those where, while I do have issues in the ending, like, again, I just felt like the ending jumped the shark a bit. And I think that's a perfect description for what happens in the ending.
It totally is, yeah.
But I still cried when her and Adam were hugging each other and she's like, you're gonna die and I have to go do this thing and I'm not going to exist anymore, and also I don't kind of really exist, and they're just having this beautiful moment. And he's like, "You knew I would come find you," and it's what he said before. I'm just like crying, you know. So, but so I'm gonna remember it fondly, despite the issues that are there. And like when we do our roundup of the year, this is going crisp, top of the line,
Yeah.
baby.
Very, very much so. Yeah, I'm really excited to. I don't know. I'd say I'm really excited to see what he writes next, but sometimes people like their genius strikes once and then they're not great again. Like the person
They
who
burn
wrote
out like a
House of
candle.
Leaves, like his sequels are kind of, or not the sequels, but like the next books are kind of weird. But at the same time, like the author just, he's very good at writing. Like just like from a prose level, again, having read that deleted scene, like the way he is able to get across the pain of having your hand reshaped is really nice. And there's again his hand with characterization here is so good, and so from a craft perspective, there's parts of this book that are just really very immaculate. But yeah, okay. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for all of our patrons for joining us. This was actually one of our more joined ones. There's like 12 people in the chat right now. We had a lot of really good comments, as you can see. We highlighted them as we go. If you would like to be self-important and have your comments highlighted, if you're a smart person, join our Patreon. Thank you all for joining us.
Love ya. Bye.